I exposed my half-sister for cheating and revealed my father's infidelity, making him lose everything in the divorce as revenge. Edit. Hello. To anyone coming from those other subs, I will remove any comments on my posts that are harsh and intended to bully me. I've already received some, and I see my post has been shared in other areas. I know the sub since I was tagged by an automod. I didn't share my experience of being bullied or called a liar, so screw it. I never asked to be posted on subreddits dedicated to mocking others because you enjoy bullying others. Get a dang life. Here's a life lesson for you neckbeard idiots. Get away from the keyboard. Did the post get removed? It is all here now. So, I, 20 female, have a sister. I'm going to call her Freya, because why not? She's 22. She has cheated often since she began dating, creating an unending circle of infidelity. Her first romance occurred when she was 15, and I was 13. She introduced me to Brad. Sweetheart. Great guy. 2 days later, she spent a significant amount of time in her room with her study buddy. I was not foolish. I figured out what she was doing. Heck, she informed her friends. She boasted to them about it while sitting on our living room couch. As soon as she did it, I realized she wasn't a good person. She disgusted me. When she and her study partner returned to her room, I took a picture via the keyhole in her door. They were simply kissing, gross, but nothing worse. I waited. The next day, I took her phone and obtained Brad's number. I texted him, explaining who I was and why I was messaging him. He did not believe she was cheating. I texted him the picture and begged him not to tell her how he discovered it. He agreed. They broke up. Obviously. She was heartbroken and blamed her pals for telling him. She never suspected me. Why should she? I was the sister who clung to her, imitated what she wore, and observed everything she did. I admired her. I kept up the pretense. I didn't want her to know what I knew or had done. I hoped she learned her lesson. However, she didn't. The next true boyfriend arrived when she was 17 and I was 15. I'd been watching her like a hawk, waiting for the next boyfriend. Nobody would date her for a while after Brad. She was a cheater after all. Even her study companion didn't want to date her because he already had a girlfriend. That condition did not continue longer than a month. After Brad broke up with Freya, someone informed his study partner's girlfriend that he was a cheater. Weird. Anyway, let's introduce Steven. Trusting, maybe a little dim. He saw the best in everyone. She convinced him that she and Brad had only ever kissed, nothing else. I didn't believe it, but whatever. This naive church lad believed she had transformed after only 2 years. Okay. Sure. After a month, I still had no dirt. I started to wonder if she had changed. Bam. She boasted to her buddies about cheating on Steven. I remained hidden. I needed the specifics. I wish I had documented the confession, but I did not. What I did hear was that she was going to meet her side piece at the park the next afternoon. We were both old enough to leave the house whenever we wanted. All we had to do was tell our mother where we were going. The next day, she stated that she was heading to the mall. I stated that I was hanging out with buddies. I waited till she was a few minutes ahead of me before going to the park. I took images of them hugging under a tree. Kissing. Rinse, repeat. Steven pledged to keep the information secret. He handed her the photos, but this time there was no proof of who took them. She would have caught me if I had taken them up close, but those images could have been shot anywhere. They were in the midst of a park. Relationship number 3. Enter the bad dude. I despised him. He was rude, disgusting, and disrespectful. This one was tricky. He was obviously on the rebound, only a few weeks after Steven, but I got a nasty feeling. I suspected he would be the type to hurt her if she cheated on him. I had to persuade her to end the relationship or have him leave her without blaming her. Even if she was terrible, I needed to plan carefully. I waited for evidence. Do you believe it? They were cheating on each other, with the same guy. I felt calling them out would merely transform them into a throuple. I was mistaken. Bad lad despised the thought of someone knowing he was gay. When he discovered that Freya knew he was bisexual, he fled so quickly that his tires caught fire. 3 down. My sister still didn't know who was exposing her, but she was becoming suspicious. She was ranting about me without realizing it, so I knew. Then she told me her strategy. She planned to tell each of her friends a different narrative and see which one her next boyfriend would get. I helped her make up phony names, descriptions, and locations. It was honestly quite enjoyable. Boyfriend number 4 was not a boyfriend, but rather a guy acquaintance of hers who was involved in the conspiracy. He wanted Freya so desperately that he would do everything to get her attention. She informed friend A she was cheating on 4 with a blonde guy and would see him at the ice cream shop tomorrow. Friend B has brown hair, beach. Friend C has red hair, house. Friend D got bald, Starbucks. Freya wanted me to check out the ice cream shop. Freya stayed at home, while 4 went to Starbucks. No one was on the beach. She reasoned that if none of us observed anything at the sites, then friend B was responsible. We did exactly that. It was hilarious to receive her continuous texts wondering whether anyone had seen someone. She was in a panic. Buddy B had been her best buddy since she was in diapers, and she did not want it to be them. In the end, nobody came up. She yelled at B in a text, accusing them of being a poor friend and alerting her ex-partners about her adultery. B disputed this heavily. But their friendship was in ruins. I supported B, claiming Freya was insane for suspecting them. Friend C supported Freya, saying it was suspicious that A, C and D did not show up at their assigned locations, and reasoning led to B. D felt they were all mad and even blamed me, claiming that if I was the snitch, why would all of the pals have turned up anywhere? They were unable to prove anything because no one was present on the beach. Freya felt offended. She said she would never hurt me, that she loved me too much to do so. We were sisters after all. In the end, D supported A and B because they believed Freya was insane. C remained with Freya. 4 and Freya never became a pair. Freya began dating Freya after believing the rat had disappeared. Poor, sweet Freya. His was the most terrible story since she cheated on him with his twin brother. This occurred when she was 20 and I was 18. Perhaps I was too old for this, but I wasn't finished yet. I was not going to let her ruin a nice guy's life. It took me longer to figure out this one. Twin brothers never question photos on Snapchat. Never question the guy's appearance. Why should they? They were twins. Then Freya shaved his head for a cancer-stricken buddy. His twin didn't? That is how I caught her? I obtained a video of them kissing in his car. Send it to Freya. I wiped my hands clean. He showed her the footage, and she freaked out. She had not informed anyone about the infidelity this time. Not me. Not C. Not 4. And since they were twins, she assumed no one would notice. Finally, she dated 4, the only guy remaining in our small town who was foolish enough to take her seriously. Of course, she did what she always did. She cheated. Here's the problem. I wasn't sure he'd break up with her over it, or if he'd believe it at all. So I waited. Collected evidence. In an unexpected twist of events, I discovered C and 4 cheating. They cheated on her. I submitted 4 images of Freya cheating. I emailed Freya photos of 4 cheating. It burst. She had no pals. Not one. She'd pushed them all away. And now, everyone in our small town knew she was a cheater. You might be asking why I'm telling this story right now. Why are you destroying my sister like this? I detest her. I've loathed her since I was a child. See, we're only half-sisters. Same father, different mothers? Our father cheated on her mom with my mother. My mother, whom I loved, was crippled. And my father had a superior attorney. When I was 5 years old, he abducted me from her. Legally, I assume. But my mother was only permitted visitation, nothing else. I have to see her once a week, for 1 hour. She was not considered safe to have children. When I got older, I would sneak over to her house after school to spend more time with her. My beloved older sister caught me and informed our father. We returned to court. And as a foolish 8-year-old, I told a judge that I despised my father. That he cheated? That guy was filth. That I wished he didn't know me. It was determined that my mother was isolating me from my father. And my visitation was restricted. I was sent to therapy to fix my feelings toward my father. Now, yes, I understand. She was just 10. But she never apologized. Even when I brought it up years later, she found nothing wrong with her actions. My mother died a year later. My father forbade me from attending her burial. My maternal grandparents attempted to push his hand, went to court. But they were shut down. They were instructed that unless they had proof that my father was a bad dad, they should not waste time. My father's wife forgave him. Not too bright, in my opinion. She reared me with him. And I had my sister, who I despised. I pretended not to. Because the best retribution is best served cold. So, why tell this story now? Because my adorable half-sister uses this subreddit. I don't believe she has ever posted, but she lurks. And I'm moving out. I am going to live with my maternal grandparents. Why now, at 20, rather than at 18? Because today, the final nail in my revenge was driven into the coffin. I left photos all throughout the house. Photos of my father cheating on my stepmother, with several women. All are date-stamped, dating back to when they took me in approximately a week ago. Walmart's photo print service was quite helpful. I only want to destroy my father, and my sister. My stepmother, whom I honestly feel awful for, has a prenuptial agreement. If he cheats on her, he will receive nothing. She owns the home, the autos, the summer house. They have a shared bank account, which he may drain. However, to my understanding, the majority of her money is in a separate account. She's super rich. She was wealthy enough to pay for whatever I needed as a child, and she smiled the entire while. I'm not sure if she ever resented me. But she never revealed it. She treated me exactly like my sister. In addition, I left documentation that my sister was aware of our father's infidelity. Proof that my darling sister knew her mother was being cheated on but said nothing. Chat logs. Vocal recordings. Even physical invoices for presents he purchased to keep her quiet. It is all there. Waiting inside the home. Today, both my sister and father are away for the weekend. My stepmother will arrive home in a few hours. And I'll be gone. Even if Freya sees this 10 seconds after I hit post, she won't be able to clean up the mess in time. Okay, I see a lot of questions concerning the keyhole. To explain, my house is really old. Built by the residents of this town, back when dwellings were made by hand. You would just yell, "Help me build," and I'll buy the beer for the day. Unfortunately, they made several poor style decisions. Every bedroom door has a huge hole beneath the handle shaped like a keyhole. It was integrated into the metal plate connecting to the doorknob. The keyholes had no lock-like function. That house was so old that when we renovated it, we discovered knob and tube wiring. What about the insulation? Newspaper. Old bedsheets. Bible pages were torn. And more. There was also a frightening doll. Other unusual design decisions included what my sister dubbed a Coraline door. It once connected to a barn beside the house. But the barn had been gone for several years. And the real kicker? The basement light switch was in a restroom, not near the basement door. The bathroom light switch was located outside the bathroom. The cloth washer drain is linked to the shower, and when the washer is turned on, the shower bubbles up occasionally. To get rid of it, turn on the shower. In the basement, on the ceiling, there are several jar lids tacked to a piece of board because the previous owners used to nail the lids up and screw the jars in to retain nails, screws, and shattered glass. According to my father, the house is filthy, and strange things make little sense. There were other things I can't recall right now, but you assume the keyhole was more prevalent. It turns out it isn't, which surprises me. Edit. Many of you believe that a wealthy lady should live in a nice home. The house we lived in was purchased while she was pregnant with Freya. My father's grandparents and her great-grandfather were the builders, I believe, maybe not. All I know is that it was his family's home for years. He grew up there, but they lost it and had to relocate. He met and married my stepmother, and they stayed with her parents while searching for a home. He saw his old house for sale and begged my stepmother for it. She agreed on the proviso that they only hire labor when absolutely necessary, as her parents trained her to spend money wisely. They had Freya. He made minor repairs to one of the rooms, but no major renovations occurred at the time because they had a baby and were very busy. When they got me, the only repairs I knew about were that mine and Freya's rooms were cold. He opened the wall to inspect the insulation, which was old newspapers. The plan was for me and Freya to remain in their room while my stepmother and father slept on the couch until it was repaired. While doing this, he discovered the knob and tube wiring. We left the house while an expert repaired the wiring throughout the house. Then he finished insulating. When it comes to antique keyholes, my stepmother felt 3 were adorable. The bathroom was the only one that had been fixed. He removed the old-style handle, replaced it with a lockable one, pushed something into the hole, and plastered or painted over it. I'm not sure. We also tore up the 2 layers of carpet and removed the wallpaper from every room. While doing this in the living room, we discovered the Coraline door, as we named it. My father informed me that there used to be a barn immediately next to the home, and he assumed that was where it led. If you opened it now, you'd find nothing because the barn was gone. They hadn't just left an open hole in the wall, there were around 6 layers of wallpaper covering the door. These repairs and changes were always going on, all my father's work, because it was his paper and he understood what he was doing. I don't remember what happened when I was a kid. Also, you appear to believe that children aged 8 to 10 are stupid and incapable of holding grudges, which is absurd. I believe I mentioned that the revenge began at 13. Sure, the problem began at 8, but I had till 13 to stew and be outraged. No, I did not do this because a 10-year-old made an error. I did it because my sister never realized what she was doing was wrong. She told me I had a better family because of it, that my mother was a R, and that she did what was best and right. I despise her for never apologizing or acknowledging how much she damaged me. Edit. You want an update? I promise to give one, but things are hectic right now, so please wait. Question. Should I make a new post for the update or just add it here when I believe it's time? I keep seeing folks enter update me. How does this work? Question 2. Someone advised posting this in the Revenge subreddit. I do not want to copy and paste this. Does anyone who reads more than me know how to share the post or something in such subreddits so that more people may appreciate it? Question 3. I notice now that there has been a cross-post. Is that what I asked you about above? If so, how can I see where it has been cross-posted? I've been enjoying reading comments on Reddit and TikTok and don't want to miss out while waiting for things to settle down. Edit. Whoever dared to send Reddit care after me, sucks to be you. I'm already in therapy, and I learned a long time ago that you don't have to notify anyone until the act is completed. So it's too late for a therapist to try to quell the raging fire in your heart. Edit. I believe you will receive an update sometime today. I was going to update immediately, but I received a call from my therapist a few minutes ago, so I now have an appointment. Is it possible that this is because the video was shared on TikTok? Is there any dread in it? Or is this a coincidence? Update. I have wrecked my sister's relationships and friendships. Now I'm tearing apart her family. Am I pleased about it? Okay, hi everyone, you all requested an update. The original is growing too long, so I'm writing a second post on it. I'll start with my stepmother's reaction. Around the time she would have arrived home, I sat in front of my phone, waiting like a child on Christmas. To my disappointment, all I received was a text message. It said, tomorrow. Lunch, favorite pizza place. It didn't say the exact name, but you get the idea. That was all. I wondered whether she was going to take my life. After some discussion with my companions, I left. Dumb? Possibly. Am I still alive? You could say that. So I met my stepmother at my favorite pizza shop. We ordered, and she smiled at me. It was sort of creepy. She inquired if I understood why she had invited me out. My response was obviously idiotic, but I said, to murder me? She laughed, shook her head, and told me she had spent too much time keeping my dumb buttocks alive to kill me now. She said she invited me since she no longer has a need to keep my father's secrets from me. I, the theatrical dung beetle, asked for information. She provided. I still do not like her, but damn. She inquired whether I knew how my parents met. Obviously, I said no. She said that her cousin, Annie, was hosting a party for her friends and family. Adrian was acquainted with my mom, but she had never met my stepmother or father. My mother was born blind but enjoyed parties anyhow. There was alcohol there, but my mother simply drank pop in a glass with ice. My mother departed early because she didn't want to be away from Freya for too long, while my father stayed. Adrian presented my father and mother. Adrian had no reason to believe anything would occur. Adrian had already become intoxicated. Adrian, according to my stepmother, is unaware of what transpired next. She wasn't sure if my father had brought my mother a fresh cup with something other than pop, if he had dropped something in her drink, or if she had taken the wrong cup. Adrian glanced over and noticed my mother wobbling. In Sam's drunken view, my mother was plainly inebriated. There were a lot of cups on the table, so Adrian imagined Mom had grabbed the wrong cup too often. She brought my mother upstairs to sleep it off. That was the last time she saw my mother that night, though she did see my father a few times. Adrian continued to hang out with my mother, and one day, she revealed that she was pregnant. At the time, my mother was single. Adrian did some mental math and blew out, asking my mother a lot of questions, but my mother laughed it off, claiming she became pregnant after a one-night stand, not at the party. Adrian agreed hesitantly. Adrian cared for both me and Freya when I was born. Her red flags went up again when she saw us side by side, so she took a DNA test, one with me and one with Adrian, figuring that if it was a family member, we would be a slight match. We were not a good match, and she was relieved. Adrian babysat for us again when I was 3 and Freya was 5. According to my stepmother, Adrian couldn't stop staring at us and conducted another test on me and Freya. She received the results, and her heart fell. Freya and I were a match. She remained silent for a while, periodically asking my mother questions, but she couldn't keep it a secret and eventually told my stepmother. My stepmother exploded at my father. He said he was inebriated and confused my mother for her. He claimed there was consent, but it was a mistake that occurred only once. My stepmother agreed to forgive him on the condition that he be a part of my life. She expected him to concede that my mother would not want to be near him, but he and my mother settled in court. My stepmother expressed her dissatisfaction with this, but she accepted it. When I became increasingly alienated from my father, she handed him money for family therapy and playdates. He used this money, plus his own, to hire a lawyer and essentially take me. She couldn't stop him once she knew what he had done. She continued to have little to no interest in me and refused to become involved. My mother died, and she understood something. If she left him now, she would be leaving me with an imbecile who would most likely sell me for a pair of shoes. If she left, she could take Freya, but she had no claim to me, and I never allowed her to adopt me. That was not helping. She attempted to assist my grandparents in fighting for me, but they were silenced. She decided she'd put up with him to protect me. Her words. I don't know if this is real. She claimed she didn't care now that I knew the truth. She was divorcing him and wouldn't have to think about him anymore. I asked her about Freya, and she shrugged, saying her daughter resembles her father too much for her liking. She planned to give Freya a couple options for addressing the issues she observed in her, such as therapy or cutting off contact with her father. But she was going to steal everything from my father, because the prenuptial agreement they signed stated that the cheater gets nothing but the clothing on their back. This is just what I wanted. We left it there. She held me and apologized for not being better, for making so many mistakes, and for making me dislike both her and Freya. She said that if I needed anything, I should let her know. I'm starting to believe I misjudged her. I don't know yet though. We parted ways, and I returned home. I waited and waited before getting a call from my dad. I did not respond. He texted me, stating I was a terrible daughter, that he wanted me out of his house, LOL, and that he never wanted to see me again. He said I destroyed his marriage for a deceased lady he barely knew. He was furious about it, but I texted him back and told him that he had years to stop cheating on my stepmother and not let me catch him. He could have lived the picture-perfect life he believed he deserved. On my mother's behalf, I also used some strong language toward him. Next up came Freya. She did, in fact, locate the post. And did they apologize? Not. She texted me paragraph after paragraph, calling me a manipulative boonies and claiming I spent my life lying to her face about a mistake she made when she was 10. That she did not have to apologize or feel awful. That I should have enjoyed being a member of a new rich family. That I did not need to notify her mother about her father's bribery or her dishonesty. During the discussion, I told my stepmother that it was my fault that she gave Freya the ultimatum to go to therapy, break off contact with Dad, or find another place to live. I merely replied with a laughing emoji and blocked both her and my father. That was all yesterday. It doesn't end there. As some of you know, my therapist phoned me this morning. He inquired whether I had time to meet today. I did, and so I met with him. When I stepped in, he turned his laptop towards me and showed me a TikTok video about me. He questioned, "Is this you?" I couldn't stop laughing. He only shook his head, saying he had a lot more work to do than he expected, but he was smiling. I noticed the smile. He just didn't want to tell me that he felt my retribution was fantastic. I know it. We talked briefly about the problem and how far it was. I disagree, but whatever. I left. Later, my stepmother called and begged for assistance with something. I went to her residence out of curiosity. She told me that her lawyer recommended her to allow Dad time yesterday to come get his belongings and leave. He gathered what he could, and today we were going to make a campfire. I questioned if this was lawyer approved, and she shrugged, stating it was her property regardless. Dad didn't buy any of it and probably couldn't afford a lawyer to fight her. So we tossed a lot of stuff in a mound and let it burn. It was kind of fun. She summoned Auntie Adrian over, who cried and held me because she felt guilty about not telling me. But she despised my father and refused to be near him. I showed my stepmother the text from Freya, and she called Freya, telling her she had only herself to blame. She told her not to blame me since she couldn't stop chasing nice guys away. If she wanted to stay with a wonderful guy, she should stop acting like her unfaithful mess of a father. She informed Freya she had a week to make her decision. She's an adult, and my stepmother can leave her whenever she wants. Then she hung up. My stepmother, Auntie Sam, and I ordered pizza. My stepmother's father called to find out what was going on and why Freya had shown up at their house crying. My stepmother went inside. I'm not sure what she said, but she walked out looking smug and told me not to worry about Freya because he was no longer my concern. I brushed it off and replied, "Whatever. Anyway, the day isn't finished yet, but I've blocked Freya and Dad." My maternal grandparents have confirmed that after my mother died, my stepmother was ready to slip them money to hire a lawyer and fight for me. I confronted her about not assisting them when Mom was alive, But she maintains that she was unaware my father was bringing them to court the second time until it was too late. She also expressed reluctance to contact my mother after assisting in the kidnapping. My stepmother's parents have also advised me not to worry about my father and Luca. If they do anything further after this, they will wish they had licked their wounds and moved on. I'm not sure what my stepmother's parents told Luca, but they appear to be strongly opposed to cheating of any type and believe Freya should do as my stepmother advised. Cut off Dad, seek therapy, and apologize to me. That, I believe, concludes things. It was chaotic for a while, but I'm getting on with my life, washing my hands of Freya and Dad. My stepmother said she entirely understands if I don't want anything to do with her. She said she made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, but she still wants to help me with expenditures and other things. In any case, everyone in my small town is aware of what they have done. Some individuals in my town, not just my therapist, discovered the post, and drama travels quickly. Apparently, I also own it. When people ask me about it, I tell them because I want them to understand what they did to me. I don't believe my stepmother is facing much blowback. She delivered all of the images I printed off to her lawyer, who laughed at the pile and claimed that my mere existence was enough proof for the divorce, but the pile didn't matter. Especially since I wrote dates on many of the photos, some of which were extremely recent. I don't believe this is as nice as the previous post because I never expected to make an update. I kind of just wrote it as it happened. I hope this calms down the drama fans in the comments. If anything more happens, I will probably post it here. There will not be any further updates. Mocked for my weight, I transformed with confidence. When I returned, my family grew jealous and tried to bring me down. Growing up, I was always an overweight child. I've always been bigger than the majority of the other kindergarten students. While my peers were still figuring out what made them distinctive, my size had already stood out. As I grew older, the weight I carried became more visible. By high school, I was indisputably overweight, and my shape and girth served as a continuous reminder of my differences. College was not much different. While some of my peers began to discover who they were or explore new aspects of themselves, I stayed trapped in the same identity, overweight and occasionally fighting with it. It wasn't easy being the bigger kid. It exposed me to continual ridicule, mockery, and nasty comments from people who didn't know or cared to understand me. Growing up, I was bullied more than I'd want to recall. Classmates teased me mercilessly. Their words ate away at me, creating profound doubts and self-doubt that, at times, felt hard to overcome. They'd call me names and make crude jokes, and I'd frequently be the punchline. I was always singled out, as if I were somehow unworthy of affection or companionship. I was continually excluded from games, parties, and gatherings. It felt like I was always on the outside, watching everyone else go through the regular ups and downs of childhood and adolescence from a distance I couldn't reach. These years of bullying influenced how I perceived myself and responded to the world. I felt out of place with others, so I sought sanctuary in books. I lost myself in literature and stories that helped me escape my daily troubles. Books did not judge me. They did not ridicule me. I became known as the nerd, and I didn't like it all that much. My younger sister, Bonnie, was radically different from me. She was only a year younger than me and possessed an effortless charisma that drew others to her. Bonnie thrived in social situations, whereas I was shy and reserved. She had a magnetic personality. She could come into a room and immediately have everyone smiling, laughing, and absolutely fascinated by her. Bonnie didn't just make friends easily. She seemed to have an intrinsic ability to persuade people to support her, almost as if she were the sun around which everyone gravitated. Regardless of our differences, I adored her. I took my job as her older sister seriously, feeling fiercely protective whenever she needed it. When she began attending the same high school as mine, I was overjoyed. Initially, being Bonnie's older sister made me feel proud, as if I had a particular place in her life. However, as she grew older, things began to alter. As Bonnie settled into high school and began to create her own personality, I saw a difference in how she perceived me. She began to see how different we were, and how differently we were treated. Whereas I was the bookish, quiet kind, she was vivacious and popular, someone who rapidly established herself among the cool circle. I observed as she became aware of my peculiarities and insecurities, which others considered uncool. Bonnie began to distance herself from me as she found new pals. She would then try to actively ignore or avoid me in school. That hurt. It genuinely pained me that my own sibling saw me as inferior. Nonetheless, I did my best to accept her decision, to give her the space she appeared to need, even if it hurt to think I was losing not only my sister, but also a friend. Bonnie gradually stopped ignoring me and began interacting with people who made me feel like an outcast. If Bonnie and I met in the corridors or at lunch, she and her pals would take advantage of any opportunity to embarrass me. They'd taunt me in front of other students or, worse, try to trip me as I passed past with my lunch tray, just to make everyone laugh. It seemed like I was losing her, not only to new people, but to the same mocking and nasty conduct I'd had to put up with for so long. I was always on guard, attempting to avoid not just my peers' criticism but also the humiliation inflicted by my own sister. It hurt a lot, especially because it came from someone I had always admired and looked up to. When Bonnie invited her pals over, they would try to gang up on me at home. They would rush into my room without knocking, then laugh and gesture to my body. They'd fling insults like geek and fatty at me like they were nothing. I'd feel like a zoo animal, as if I were there to entertain them. When they entered my personal space in my room, I felt small and alone, as if I were an alien in my own home. I tried talking to my parents about it several times, hoping they would realize how tough it was for me to deal with Bonnie's conduct. But every time I brought it up, they dismissed my worries. They'd smile and defend her actions, claiming that this was how siblings related, and that Bonnie was merely playing with me. They told me it was harmless, even suggesting that I loosen up and stop taking everyone's taunts so seriously. They told me that I was older and should be more patient and resilient. So, not only did I face years of bullying from my peers, including my own sister, but my concerns were repeatedly rejected by my parents. It made me feel isolated, as if no one in my own family realized or understood how deeply it hurt. The only time I ever felt properly noticed by our parents was when I received my grades. Academics had always come effortlessly to me, and I became accustomed to receiving high grades. In a way, it was the one area where I felt superior to everyone else. It was also the one way I could make my parents proud. The one part of my life that they appeared to actually care about. My parents enjoyed bragging about my accomplishments to friends and family, portraying me as the family scholar, as if my grades were evidence of their parenting prowess. But Bonnie detested the analogies. She was not an academic overachiever, nor did she want to be, but our parents' repeated reminders of my accomplishments made her resentful. They put my grades up as an example, meaning that she needed to do the same. I could always sense her annoyance and rage, which I assume is why she did what she did to me. Bonnie would occasionally attempt to destroy my hard work in order to get back at me. She'd sneak into my room in the middle of the night and take my homework. Sometimes, shortly before a large task was due, I'd wake up in the morning to find my meticulously finished work gone. Panic would set in, and I'd feverishly hunt through my books, papers, and files, becoming increasingly anxious with each passing minute. And there she'd be, smirking, watching me from the doorway, relishing every moment of my anxiety. To her, it was a minor win, a way to bring me down a peg and remind me that I wasn't invincible. She understood how important my grades were to me, how much of my self-worth I had invested in them, and she enjoyed disturbing that aspect of my life. I only out about her stealing my assignments years later, when she drunkenly admitted one evening. My friendship with Bonnie has grown softer over time. Though we're not close, you might say we've matured a little, and some of the bitterness from our youth has dissipated. However, the strong closeness that siblings often enjoy did not fully emerge between us. After college, I moved away and began constructing a life in a new place with an interesting job and new chances, which meant I didn't visit my family very frequently. As time passed, our communications became limited to occasional phone calls or texts. So, when I decided to travel home for the summer, I was truly excited to see everyone. It had been a long time since we'd all gotten together as a family, and I was excited to catch up and reconnect. However, not everything went as planned. Our family lunch began well enough. Everyone appeared delighted to see me, and for a moment, it felt like old times. That changed, however, when Bonnie unexpectedly revealed her engagement. None of us saw it coming, and we initially assumed she was joking. However, it became evident that she was serious. She proudly put out her hand, displaying a gorgeous ring, and I couldn't help but remark how exquisite it was. I was genuinely happy for her, delighted that she'd finally met someone she loved and who loved her back. Almost as soon as the congratulations subsided, Bonnie turned to me and inquired about my recent activities. I told her about my profession, my life, and how rewarding things had been for me. Before I could finish, she cut me off. "I can't help but say this," she started, smirking. "But why are you still fat? I mean, if your life is really that great, shouldn't you have lost weight by now?" Her remarks hit me like a slap, reawakening old insecurities I thought I had overcome. The room became uncomfortably silent, and I could feel everyone's gaze on me, waiting to see how I would respond. I merely shrugged and tried to laugh awkwardly at her comment. But my parents immediately joined in to criticize me. They began talking about how I was still obese and unmarried, and how they were concerned that I would never have children. I felt so mortified hearing them talk like that. My successes, the profession I was proud of, the life I had made on my own in another city, none of it seemed to matter to them. They were just concerned with my weight and the fact that I did not have my own family. As my parents and sister continued to talk about me, their comments wounded deeper than I imagined. I'd spent years of my life finally coming into my own, gaining confidence and independence, yet at those moments, I felt like the same nervous, awkward teenager I'd always been, desperate for my family's acceptance. My parents then applauded Bonnie for getting engaged before me and expressed their pride in her. To them, I was the inferior child, successful but not quite enough. What was supposed to be a happy family reunion had swiftly turned into a heartbreaking reminder of old scars. At that point, I felt more like an outsider than ever. Bonnie did not stop. She continued to ask probing questions. So, when are you getting married? I mean, do you even have a boyfriend? She was blatantly mocking me in front of everyone by bringing up my romantic life. My parents eagerly jumped on the subject, agreeing with Bonnie that it was past time for me to meet someone before it was too late. They pointed out that Bonnie, being younger, was settling down before me, but I, being older, was still throwing my life away at work. I attempted to argue that I liked my life the way it was, that my profession and freedom provided me with fulfillment. My job paid well, and I was passionate about it. And why did I have to find a man and have a child? I am content just as I am. But my words didn't appear to register. My mother, in particular, appeared disdainful, giving me a pointed look and taunting, "What's the point of earning all that money if you don't have anyone to come home to?" It was as if she couldn't believe that happiness existed outside of marriage or family. Sitting there, I had the typical feeling of being misunderstood, that my life choices were disregarded. This was my family, the ones who should have known me best, but they seemed to be obsessed with a different idea of happiness. I had come home seeking connection and warmth, but instead got judgment and taunts. Bonnie then mentioned that she anticipated me to have at least a +1 by the time her wedding rolled around. She explained that she didn't want people to think her sister was an old, miserable woman who was getting married alone. The comment stung. I simply shook my head and assured her I would try. This is when my parents casually told me that since Bonnie's wedding was approaching, even if I couldn't find a spouse, I could at least try to lose weight and look better for her wedding. They suggested that if I reduced weight, it would be simpler for me to attract a partner. Bonnie agreed with my parents and said she wanted me to lose at least a few pounds. I sat there, astonished and humiliated, with an aching that I hadn't felt in years. How could my relatives talk to me like this? Did I truly deserve their hateful words simply because I was overweight? Was I not meant to have feelings because I was fat? I was a normal human being, just like them. I functioned exactly like everyone else. I never saw my weight as a hindrance, so why should they? I'd even dated men who liked me just the way I was, but my parents and Bonnie were making it appear as if my weight kept me from finding love or having men approach me, which wasn't even true. I wanted to defend myself and tell them how cruel their words were, but I felt paralyzed and unable to find the correct words. Their statements took me back to high school, to the agonizing times when my weight made me a target. I despised how nonchalantly my relatives brought up my deepest fears, seemingly unconcerned about how they affected me. So I sat there, holding in my pain, and let the topic go to anything else. When I returned home from my trip to see my family, I pushed myself into reducing weight with a zeal I had not realized I possessed. It began as a method to prove something to my family, but it eventually grew more personal. I joined a gym, followed a rigorous diet, and even hired a personal trainer. My trainer has been a lifesaver. She knew just how to assist me through a path tailored to my own needs, having gone through her own change from overweight to healthy weight. She created a routine specific to my goals and encouraged me every step of the way, reminding me to give myself grace when I stumbled. This time, everything seemed to click. I started losing weight steadily, and as the pounds fell off, I felt lighter, not just physically but also mentally. For the first time in my life, I began to feel and appear different. My confidence increased quickly. I used to assume that decreasing weight wouldn't have much of an influence, but it has. People see me differently today. Strangers are nicer and more attentive. Friends and colleagues regard me with fresh respect, and I can't deny that this feels like a validation I've never had before. It's as if I've suddenly become more noticeable than I was before. My new body brought a new sense of style. I overhauled my entire wardrobe, filling it with clothing I'd only fantasized about wearing. I even opted for a full hair makeover, attempting a daring and trendy style that I would have been too afraid to try in the past. Perhaps it seems expensive, but I've never felt so good. I look in the mirror now, and I don't recognize the person staring back. It's like meeting a version of myself that I never knew existed. I'm proud of how far I've gone, not just because I've lost weight, but also because I've gained confidence and self-assurance. Bonnie's wedding is approaching, so my family has invited me to fly down and join them for lunch to finalize some details. However, I do not feel like returning home. I don't want my family to ridicule me again and make me feel tiny, especially now that I'm feeling good about myself for the first time in a long while. I don't want to go to Bonnie's wedding anymore because of how she and my parents have treated me. But I know if I don't go, they'll be furious and give me a long lecture about how family is family and how, no matter how heartbroken I am, I must be present for Bonnie's big day. So, would it be wrong for me not to attend my sister's wedding? Update 1. Wow. I'm overwhelmed by everyone's response. Some of your proposals are truly humorous. I can't believe you're encouraging me to show up and mess with my sister now that I've shed so much weight. Growing up as a fat kid had a negative impact on my self-esteem, particularly in terms of how I perceived myself. I struggled with self-doubt for a long time, always believing that I wasn't good enough or didn't measure up to others. But reading all of your responses has been a game changer. It's as if you've helped me see myself in a completely new light, and I'm finally starting to feel more confident than I ever have. In fact, I'm seriously considering turning up to my family's lunch and shocking them. They haven't seen me in a long time, and since I don't use social media, they have no idea how much weight I've dropped. It will be interesting to witness their reactions. Update 2. Okay, Reddit, you're not prepared for this upgrade. Grab some popcorn because things are about to get exciting. I decided to fly down to join my family for lunch. I assumed that when they saw me, they would be happy with the transformation I had undergone, because after all, they had been the ones who pushed me toward it in the first place. Surely, they'd be overjoyed to see the positive improvements in me and finally recognize the effort I'd put in. The instant I walked into my parents' house, their jaws absolutely dropped. They looked at me, astonished, as if they couldn't believe I was the same person. After a time, they stammered, wondering if it was actually me. I gave them a big hug, thrilled with their reaction. They continually complimented my appearance, saying how beautiful I looked and how they couldn't believe it was me. However, when Bonnie came, the situation changed. She didn't notice me at first, disregarding me as if I were invisible, as she had done many times before. But when I rose up to greet her, she did a double take, her eyes widening with surprise. She gave an odd, almost forced laugh before reaching over and pushing her fingers on my stomach, wide-eyed, as if she wanted proof that I had truly dropped all of that weight. My parents chuckled at her reaction and informed her that they couldn't believe it either. As we settled in for lunch, the subject turned to my makeover. Bonnie and my parents bombarded me with questions about how I'd done it, marveling at how different I appeared. Their voices were full of surprise, as if they had never imagined I could look any other way. Bonnie, in particular, kept saying that she had never anticipated me to shift so dramatically. After a while, she said, "When I first requested you to lose weight, I never imagined you'd look this good. I had no idea you had that jawline and those ankles underneath all that fat." I hesitated, trying to retain my cool, and smiled at her before telling her, "Bonnie, I've always been gorgeous. Losing weight simply improved my characteristics." Bonnie, on the other hand, contended that it wasn't just that. There was something else about me that was unique. She then had the audacity to inquire, "Did you have any procedures done on yourself? Because you can't look this fantastic on your own." I could feel my blood starting to boil. The hubris to believe that I required surgery to look attractive, despite the fact that I had worked so hard to achieve my current appearance. I looked her directly in the eyes and said, "Wow, Bonnie. It's amazing how little you think of me. No surgery, just a lot of hard work and self-love, which you should try someday." Bonnie's expression changed from surprise to displeasure, but I didn't care. It felt amazing to finally say something and put her in her place. Before she could react, my parents jumped in, attempting to smooth things over in their own way. "You shouldn't be offended," my mother replied. "All three of us have never seen you look like this before. Honestly, you look more lovely now than Bonnie, and she's the one getting married." Bonnie appeared much angrier following Mom's remark. I simply ignored her and concentrated on my food, allowing my sister to seethe in her rage. Then my mother interjected. "You know, I was thinking, maybe you should go back to your original hair color. I believe you would look even better in your natural hue. This blonde appearance causes you to stand out too much. Maybe you could just return to your former look." Bonnie and my father quickly agreed with her. My father supported my mother, saying that Bonnie was always the blonde daughter in the family and I was the brunette, so it would be a good idea for me to return to my original hair color, which would make me appear more like myself. Hearing their statements, I was taken aback. I suddenly felt like the three of them were ganging up on me and attempting to bring me down. My hairstylist was the one who changed my hair color to blonde because it complemented my skin tone and face better. It had nothing to do with attempting to outperform or overshadow my sister. I could see why Bonnie was jealous of me because I looked so nice right now, but I couldn't figure out why my parents were so unhappy with me. It was as if they wanted to revert me to my original self, despite the fact that they were the ones who wanted me to be more acceptable for their darling daughter's forthcoming wedding. But now that I did, they couldn't accept who I had become. Instead of recognizing my progress, they sought to undermine me. Finally, I questioned my folks. What is your problem? Why can't I be blonde? Does my sister own that hue or something? I paused, annoyed. No, she doesn't. I can be either blonde or brunette. It's my decision. Why does it matter to you so much? I couldn't understand why they were so obsessed with returning to my former self, as if my appearance had to match who I was. My mother scoffed at me, claiming that I was willfully sabotaging Bonnie's approaching wedding by attempting to stand out with my appearance. Bonnie also jumped in, suggesting that with my weight loss, I was already going to stand out, so did I really need to match her hair color? My father, as usual, agreed with them, telling me that I was being difficult for no reason and that, as Bonnie's sister, I should be more tolerant. I couldn't believe what I heard. It was not about stealing anything, it was about giving myself the freedom to do whatever made me happy. But instead of supporting it, they were all concerned about how it would make Bonnie uncomfortable. Do you know what? I'm done with this, I murmured, the words almost burning as they left my lips. The three of you are so wrapped up in your own negativity that you can't even admit I've changed. The reality is, I've always been fantastic just the way I am, but none of you ever noticed. Now that I've lost weight, it's still not good enough for you. No matter what I do, it is never enough. I took time to process what I had just said. They only gazed at me, and it didn't matter. I was done with holding back. Since you all have so much to say about me, I believe it is time I gave you some unsolicited advice, just like you do to me. I turned to my mother first, feeling the words surge inside me like a deluge. Mom, I really hate how loose the skin is around your eyes and your lips. They droop on one side when you laugh. I can't help but notice all your crooked teeth, and honestly, it's just disgusting to me. Dad, I said sharply. You're bald. You really have no right to say anything about anyone's hair or their hair color. How are you going to criticize someone's looks when you can't even keep a full head of hair? I noticed his face stiffening, but I wasn't finished yet. Finally, I resorted to Bonnie. And you, don't ever talk down to me again. Between the two of us, I've always been the better-looking sibling. But now, with all the weight I've lost, you look even fatter than me. Just look at those chubby arms of yours. Bonnie's cheeks flushed with shame, and she appeared to be on the verge of tears. I then hoisted my glass, downed my drink in one go, and walked out with a smirk, leaving everyone stunned and astonished. I said everything I had to say. I couldn't believe these words had come from my mouth, yet I didn't regret them one bit. They deserved to be humiliated after years of being criticized. After lunch, I flew directly back home. I didn't want to stay behind and attend Bonnie's wedding. Since then, my phone has been overloaded with voicemails and texts from my parents and Bonnie. They've been calling me disrespectful and foul-mouthed for how I spoke to them and then left. Mom even insists that I fly down to Bonnie's wedding, claiming that not having me there will make her in-laws unhappy. Update 3. So I ended up skipping Bonnie's wedding. Thanks to all of your suggestions, instead of returning home to attend, I decided to treat myself to an impromptu stay at a 5-star resort. It was truly one of the best moves I'd made in a long time. I spent the weekend doing whatever made me happy. No drama or pressure, just pure enjoyment. I treated myself to a spa day, binge-watched my favorite shows, and even discovered some new sites in the city that I'd been dying to visit. I've also blocked my relatives, so they can't contact me again. I'm weary of being bullied by them and want to avoid all of the poison and drama. Right now, my primary focus is on self-care. I was left at the altar when my fiancée ran off with my brother. 2 years later, she asked for my help, claiming she now saw the toxicity of my family. 2 years ago, I stood at the altar, ashamed and heartbroken. My fiancée ditched me an hour before the wedding and took off with my brother. I never saw it coming, or perhaps I overlooked the warning signs because I adored her. We had been together for 5 years, and I assumed we were happy. However, looking back, it is evident that I was unaware of many things. My family never treated me as a priority. My parents always favored my brother. He was the golden child, attractive, wealthy, and the type of guy everyone gravitated toward. I was the quieter one, always being compared to him, making me feel like I didn't measure up. Growing up, I was always asked why I couldn't be more like my brother. Or your brother did it? Why can't you? I expected things to change as we got older, but they didn't. If anything, things grew worse. My fiancée had everything I wanted in a partner: intelligent, attractive, and determined. However, she had a selfish side. It wasn't clear at first. It manifested itself in little ways, such as insisting on always getting her way or never apologizing when she wounded my feelings. I dismissed it because I loved her and believed we were creating a life together. I never expected her to betray me the way she did. The wedding was meant to be the best day of my life. Everything was ready: the venue, the food, and the guests. I awoke nervous yet delighted, knowing that I would soon begin a new chapter with the lady I loved. Then, 1 hour before the ceremony, she called me. Her voice was calm, almost frigid, when she told me she couldn't do it. She stopped loving me. Then she revealed the true bombshell. She had been dating someone else. That person was my brother. She didn't even appear guilty about it. She stated she didn't want to hurt me, but she felt compelled to follow her heart. I didn't even have time to digest what she said before hanging up. My parents, who had already arrived at the event, knew. My brother had told them earlier in the morning. Instead of supporting me, they tried to keep things calm to avoid humiliating themselves. When I addressed them, they defended her. They said things like, "Maybe it's for the best, and you don't want to marry someone who doesn't love you." My mother even had the arrogance to advise that I be happy for them. My father was no better. He simply stood there and ordered me to keep it together. It wasn't until later that I discovered my parents' involvement in all of this. My brother had always been interested in her, and they seemed to think she was too good for me. They decided she would be a better fit for him. They had been urging her to select him for months, even offering her financial support if she left me for him. I had no clue my family could be that deceptive. I walked out of the venue that day without looking back. I left everything behind, including my family, friends, and hometown. I couldn't stand being near any of them. I went to another state and started again. I got a job, a little apartment, and spent the next 2 years repairing my life. At first, it was difficult. I knew no one, and the loneliness was overwhelming. But as time passed, I discovered serenity. I met new people, began treatment, and concentrated on myself for the first time in my life. I did not inform anyone where I was or how to reach me. I didn't want anything to do with those who had deceived me. Then, 2 years later, my ex-fiancée arrived at my home. I had just returned home from work, and when I opened the door, I could scarcely recognize her. She appeared fatigued and worn out, as if she hadn't slept or eaten properly in days. Her once confident and polished manner was gone. She shook and her eyes were red from sobbing. She told me that living with my brother had become a nightmare. He was manipulative, emotionally abusive, and disloyal. Behind closed doors, the beloved golden child turned out to be a monster. They had married shortly after our wedding catastrophe and had a child together, but their relationship had crumbled. My parents, who had previously been so willing to assist her, turned against her when she failed to achieve their expectations. She stated that she felt caged, alone, and terrified. She intended to divorce my brother but was scared of what he may do. He possessed money, contacts, and a vicious streak. She was afraid he would wreck her finances and take their child away. She approached me because she believed I could assist. She asked me to testify in court about how toxic and manipulative my family was. She believed my testimony would boost her case and help her keep custody of her child. I stood there, listening to her, angry. She had made her decisions. She knew exactly what kind of person my brother was, yet she picked him over me. She allowed my family to manipulate her and went away without looking back. And now, after everything she has put me through, she expects me to come to her rescue. I told her no. I did not yell or quarrel, I just said no. I closed the door. It felt nice. But it did not last. A few days later, the texts began. She managed to spread the news about her arrival. Old friends and even mutual acquaintances began reaching out to me. They labeled me selfish, spiteful, and cowardly for refusing to assist a woman in need. Her former maid of honor, the same girl who was meant to support her at our wedding, sent me a lengthy note about how I was not man enough to step up. She claimed I was confirming my family's point, that I was weak and did not deserve my ex in the first place. I couldn't believe their arrogance. These people had departed from my life following the wedding. None of them had spoken up for me back then, but now they believed they had the right to lecture me. I disregarded the majority of it, but it still stung. They had no idea what I had gone through. They didn't care. They simply wanted me to fix a situation that was not mine to fix. Now I'm wondering if I did the proper thing. I owe my ex-fiancée nothing. She created her bed, and now she must lie in it. But there's a youngster involved. An innocent child who didn't pick this situation. Part of me wonders if my refusal to assist will harm him in the long run. At the same time, aiding her would mean reintroducing my family and her drama into my life. And I am not sure I am willing to do it. Reddit, what would you have done in my position? Did I make the right decision, or am I also selfish? Update 1. I honestly didn't anticipate my post to get so viral. To be honest, when I originally started penning things out, I had no idea if anyone would care. But now I'm reading through hundreds of comments, some helpful, some difficult to read, and it's been a lot to comprehend. Thank you to everyone who has offered advice or simply expressed their thoughts. Whether you agree with me or not, I appreciate your support and diverse viewpoints. Writing all of this out has definitely helped me go through a lot of emotions and gain some clarity. But it's also brought out a lot of feelings I thought I'd buried deep down. After posting, I spent the rest of the evening reading the comments. Some individuals brought up points I hadn't considered, such as the possibility that getting engaged in my ex-fiancée's legal difficulties may exacerbate the situation. Not only for me, but for the child as well. Others were more direct, instructing me to keep as far away as possible. She created her bed. Now she may lie in it. Those statements helped me feel better about my first reaction to her turning up at my home. But then there were the ones who mentioned something different. The child. I know I don't owe anything to my ex-fiancée. But hearing so many people say, the child is innocent in all of this, really got to me. Many of you suggested that I try to do something for the kid without being drawn back into the poisonous mess that is my family. And it is what I have been struggling with ever since. I don't want anything to do with her or my brother again. I don't want to be the hero or decent guy in a situation where I'm only setting myself up for further heartbreak. But at the same time, I feel compelled to do something, even if it isn't for her. It's funny though. After reading so many of your comments, I began to wonder if there was anything I could do that wouldn't need me to communicate with her again or get dragged back into the drama. I even pondered phoning a lawyer to see what would happen if I testified or aided in some manner. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. It's still not my responsibility to change anything. And especially not if it involves interacting with my poisonous family again. However, the guilt of knowing that the child is trapped in the center of this chaos persists. Then, like clockwork, my brother reappeared in the image. The email. Yesterday morning, I received an email from him. Yes, my brother, the one I haven't spoken to in 2 years. The last time we did this was when I canceled my wedding. His email was frigid, and simply reading it made my stomach plummet. It was short and to the point. I heard our ex-fiancé asked you for aid. This is a tremendous error. If you become interested, keep out of family matters. You'll regret it. I stared at the message for much too long. I was inclined to respond, but then I thought, why the hell should I? This guy is the one who forced me out of my own life. He was the one who perpetrated all of this manipulation with my ex. And now he believes he can tell me what to do? The arrogance. To be honest, I'm not sure if the word audacity is strong enough to describe how I feel about him. But I did not answer. I could not be bothered. It's almost funny how entitled he still feels. He has no idea what I've been through or what I've had to deal with over the years, and yet he believes he gets to decide how I should handle things. Thanks. That was when the phone rang. An unknown number. And I am sure you can guess who it was. Yep. My mother. After 2 years of silence, she finally decided to phone me. The moment I picked up the phone and heard her voice, I was reminded of all the reasons I'd cut ties with her and my father. I didn't even get a "how have you been?" or "I miss you" before she got right into it. She began discussing the divorce, my brother, and how I needed to be the bigger person and maintain peace for the benefit of the family. That's when I snapped. I don't recall what I said, but I know I told her I didn't want to hear it anymore. She went on, however, about how difficult things were for my brother and how I was punishing the child by not intervening. I told her I didn't care and wasn't going to fix their mess anymore. I hung up after that. That conversation made me numb. For some reason, it reminded me of everything my parents had done to me, how they always favored my brother, how they tolerated his worst conduct, and how they always expected me to be the quiet one who simply accepted everything they threw at me. It has never been about me. Not once. I've always been the backup son, expected to deal with whatever trash came my way. Hearing my mother defend my brother again was like getting slapped in the face. It made me realize that nothing had changed, not with my parents or with him. And to be honest, it is why I am not returning. As tempting as it is to take the moral high ground, I know I'd only be perpetuating the toxic cycle. So, I'm finished. I've made peace with going away, but this situation has resurfaced many old scars that I thought were healed. As much as I want to block everything out and pretend it's not happening, I can't ignore the reality that the child is caught in the center of it all. I keep thinking about how helpless he must feel as he watches everything unfold. I know he is innocent, but what if he is being emotionally manipulated, as my ex was? It kills me just thinking about it. Still, I keep telling myself that this is not my struggle. I've already been through enough, and I'm not about to be drawn back into their drama. I've been sitting with these emotions for a few days, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to just move on, leave them to their mess, and walk away forever. But there's another part of me that wonders if I can aid the child without getting sucked back into the fray. I'm not sure what the correct move is yet. But I do know one thing: I cannot allow myself to return to the person I was before. The one who was always trying to make everything better for everyone else while ignoring my own needs. I worked way too hard to get here to be dragged back in. But the remorse over the child? Yes, it is still there. And it isn't going away anytime soon. How would you handle my situation? Would you help, or would you just walk away? I'm having trouble finding the right balance. Update 2. I figured things would calm down following my last update, but I was mistaken. Instead, things have become even worse, and I'm honestly wondering how I put up with these individuals for so long. I feel like the universe is putting my determination to the test. Every time I believe I've erected a tall enough wall to keep them out, someone finds a way to sneak over it or slip through a crack. Since my mother's call, I've been completely inundated. It began with a few texts from my extended family, including aunts, uncles, and cousins. And now it appears that they have all established a single front. They're coming at me from all sides, accusing me of damaging the family by not supporting my brother, or, worse, by remaining out of his family problems, despite the fact that I am doing just that. It's as if they believe I'm bound to get engaged simply because we share blood. Some of them have even accused me of holding a grudge and not being a man about it. I've been working hard over the last 2 years to restore my life and move on from the toxic disaster they created. They now believe I should abandon everything in order to return to the drama. It is exhausting. They don't understand that leaving away was not a choice made out of spite, but out of necessity. I couldn't keep living in that familial dynamic. It was suffocating. But they do not want to hear that. To them, family means unwavering commitment, even if it means sacrificing your happiness and well-being. On top of all the familial drama, I've begun receiving emails from my ex-fiancée. She's been sending them every few days now. I initially ignored them but ultimately caved in and opened one. I almost wished I hadn't, because they were all identical. She begs me to reconsider, emphasizing how much I can help her and her child. Each email is more urgent than the last, and she has even started sending photos of the child. I understand she's in a bad predicament, but the entire situation feels exploitative. She knows I'm not heartless, and I believe she's attempting to use that against me. She seems to know that if she tugs on my heartstrings, I will give in. The thing is, I am not stupid. I see what she is doing. But I can't deny it makes me feel guilty. I did not ask for those photos, and I did not want them. But she knows I'll look at them, and the child's face in those photos, with his little eyes looking up at me, guilt trips me more than anything else. I can't shake the feeling that I'm letting him down, although knowing that not becoming engaged is the correct thing to do. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, one of my old acquaintances contacted me unexpectedly. He's someone I haven't communicated with in years, but he obviously heard about the scenario through the grapevine. He called me late one evening, and when his name appeared on the screen, I almost didn't respond. I wasn't in the mood for another, "you should do the right thing" conversation, but I answered anyway. He didn't even waste time exchanging pleasantries. He stepped straight in, telling me to be the larger person and aid my ex-fiancée, even if it was simply to safeguard the child. He went on to say that I couldn't just let a child suffer because of my brother's actions. I'm not sure if he didn't comprehend the whole picture or if he just didn't care, but it was evident to me that he expected me to help simply because it was the moral thing to do. He depicted me as a monster for not immediately going to her rescue. I told him I couldn't help and that the matter was between her, my brother, and my family, not me. But he didn't hear it. He accused me of being stubborn, carrying grudges, and neglecting this child's needs. He made it sound as if I was abandoning someone who was obviously in need. But here's the thing, she's not the only person in need. I've spent so many years in this toxic environment, dealing with everyone else's problems but never my own. I am done with that. I quickly stopped the call, but it only made me feel more conflicted. I wanted to defend myself and explain why I wasn't going to get involved, but I didn't. I understand it is not my obligation to clean up this mess. I understand she and her family made their decisions, and they now have to live with them. But the guilt is still there. No matter how hard I try, it's been difficult to focus on anything else lately. I find myself questioning everything. I went out with some friends the other day to distract myself from the situation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. One of them even joked that I was being a good Samaritan by not getting involved, which made me laugh. But it wasn't amusing. It only made me feel even more alienated. My buddies don't truly comprehend what I'm going through. The few friends I have left from my old life are either too afraid to speak up or simply believe I am doing the right thing. However, it does not feel right. Especially when a child is involved. I've also been thinking about how my ex-fiancé's situation could worsen if my brother and parents continue to press for full custody. I'm honestly not sure what could happen. My family has always been adept at manipulating the system, and I've witnessed them do so previously. I'm concerned that the youngster will be placed in a circumstance that is as horrible, if not worse, than what he is now suffering with. Despite these sentiments, I can't bring myself to get personally involved. So, I am still stuck. Part of me continues thinking that remaining out of it is the proper decision. But another part of me is questioning if I'm making the wrong decision. Will I live in regret if I don't help? And if I do help, would it only lead me back into their toxic world? This is a no-win situation. What would you do in my shoes? Would you aid the child, even if it meant reconnecting with your poisonous family again? Or would you keep your distance and let them sort things out for themselves? Update 3. After reading more of your comments and reflecting on the situation, I realized I couldn't sit back and do nothing, for the sake of the child. While I owe nothing to my ex-fiancé or my family, I understood that the child did not choose to be born into this situation. He is innocent. And if I have the means to help him escape the toxic environment that my brother and family have created, I should try. But I also realized that if I was going to do something, I needed to keep my peace in the process. I will not let them take me back into their world. I've worked too hard to rebuild my life and set boundaries, and I'm not going to give it all up for something out of my control. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it. Eventually, I came up with what I thought was the best compromise. I submitted an anonymous report to Child Protective Services, CPS. At first, I was unsure whether this was the proper decision. But as I thought about it more, it seemed evident that this was the only way I could possibly help without getting dragged back into the pandemonium. One evening, I sat down with all of the information I had. What my ex-fiancé had told me about my brother's behavior, how my parents treated her, and how toxic and manipulative the family dynamic had always been. I added all pertinent detail I could think of. I didn't simply talk about the physical and mental trauma my ex-fiancé had experienced. I also discussed how my brother's dominating behavior had impacted everyone around him, particularly her. I detailed how he had always used his charm to trick everybody, including my parents, into turning a blind eye to what he did. I made sure to explain how my parents had always supported him, making excuses for him and putting me aside in the process. I realized that if CPS was to investigate the incident, they would need to grasp the entire context of the child's surroundings. My brother's behavior was not the only issue. My family had always opted to enable his acts rather than hold him accountable. I also attached screenshots of some of the emails my ex-fiancé sent me. She had expressed her fear for herself and the child, her sense of being imprisoned in the marriage, and her lack of a support system. I knew I didn't have first-hand evidence of abuse against the child, but I hoped CPS would find enough in what I presented to launch an investigation. They might not be able to locate enough to intervene, but they would at least be aware of the situation. I needed to know that someone was watching out for the child, even if it wasn't me. Filing that report felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. It was the proper thing to do, but I didn't have to return to the craziness of my old life. I informed CPS that I wanted to remain anonymous and did not want to be contacted for follow-ups or participate in the case in any way. I did not want my name mentioned. I just wanted to make sure the kid was secure. And I felt if CPS thought my report had merit, they'd look into it further without my involvement. I did not expect immediate feedback or closure. CPS was unlikely to provide me with updates, and if they did, it would most likely be after they had done an inquiry. I was at ease knowing that I had done everything I could. I didn't have to reopen old wounds from my family's dysfunction, nor did I have to get caught up in their drama. At the end of the day, the report was the most effective thing I could do without jeopardizing my mental health or the life I'd worked so hard to rebuild. In the days that followed, I attempted to concentrate on moving forward, which is easier said than done. My family is relentless, and every time I think they'll leave me alone, another message or email appears. This time, it wasn't simply my mother and a distant cousin. This time, my brother reached out. And honestly, I didn't know how to answer. He sent me a short email accusing me of betraying the family and acting vindictively. He told me I was making a major mistake and would regret it. But there was something else about the tone of the message that made me pause for a moment. It wasn't simply anger. He was concerned. I did not even bother responding. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that everything he said was pure manipulation. It was not about him. It was about control. And I wasn't about to fall for it again. I've done this song and dance previously. It is always the same. They try to make me feel awful about setting boundaries and doing the right thing. But, in the end, they're the ones who caused this mess. I don't owe them an explanation anymore, for anything. I hadn't heard from my ex-fiancée in a few days, which was a relief, until yesterday, when I received one final email from her. It was short. Just a simple message that read, "Thank you. And I'm sorry for what I put you through." There are no details. No explanations. Only those words. It left me with mixed emotions. On the one hand, I'm relieved she acknowledged the pain she caused. But on the other hand, it made me realize how much she is going through. Perhaps something has changed in her situation, or she is finally recognizing the truth of her predicament. Regardless, it's evident that she's still battling. I don't know what will happen next in her custody struggle, but if there's even a slim chance she can get the child out of that harmful atmosphere, I hope it goes well for her. But I have to tell myself that I cannot get back engaged. I can't solve her problems. And I've already contributed significantly. Now it is up to the authorities. If CPS investigates and finds sufficient evidence to act, I will have done my part. If not, I'll have to admit that I can't control everything, no matter how much I want to. Final update. Thank you to everyone who has provided advice, encouragement, and even tough love. Your words helped me understand the big picture and gave me the confidence to act without second-guessing myself. And to anyone reading this who may be in a similar situation, it's okay to keep your peace. You can care for others while still maintaining your boundaries. Doing the right thing can sometimes entail taking a step back and allowing the system to work. You don't have to repair everything yourself. Do what you can and leave the rest to people who are more qualified to manage it. I'm not sure what will happen next, with my ex-fiancé, my brother, or any of this mess. But I know one thing. Whatever happens, I will be fine. My mother-in-law and sister called me a freeloader while I secretly paid their bills. They threw me and my son out. They'll regret it. My life was rather straightforward until Jake came around. I worked as a fitness trainer at a neighborhood gym, where I helped others get into shape. It kept me busy enough not to think about the absence of drama in my personal life. Everything changed the day Jake stepped into my gym. "Hey, I'm looking to switch up my routine. Got any killer moves to start with?" he inquired, his tone light but his stare serious. I gave him a once-over. He wasn't your typical rookie, unsure which machine to try first. No, he appeared to know his way around a gym but was looking for something more. "Sure," I said, directing him to a set of weights. "Let's see what you've got." The initial session turned into a week. Then a month. Our casual conversations became longer and more personal. Jake owned a modest family restaurant known for its authentic Italian cuisine. "It's all about the sauce," he'd explain. "And nobody makes it like my mom." He spoke about his mother with admiration and frustration, hinting at strong family ties. He surprised me one afternoon as we finished a particularly strenuous workout. "Listen, Emily, I've been thinking, how about dinner at my place? You can meet my mom and try that sauce I keep bragging about." I paused, more out of surprise than disinterest. "Yeah, why not? I'm curious if it's as good as you claim." Dinner was cozy. The food was fantastic, and the company was surprisingly comfortable. His mother, Anna, smiled warmly and laughed heartily, but her eyes seemed to size me up with each glance. Sophia, his younger sister, also stopped by. Her presence was more prickly, her remarks crisp and rapid. "So, Emily," Sophia began, a sneer flashing on her lips as she examined the muscles I had worked so hard to develop. "Jake tells us you're quite the fitness guru. Ever deal with hopeless cases, or do you just make the fit fitter?" I chuckled and took her jab in stride. "I believe everyone has potential. It's all about finding the right motivation." Jake became a continuous presence in my life. He consistently arrived at the gym at the same time and always found an excuse to talk a bit longer. "You know, I never believed in fate or any of that stuff," he admitted one evening as we closed the gym together. "But meeting you, maybe I was wrong." His statements were a combination of gruff charm and clumsy earnestness. It was refreshing. Despite the niggling voice in my head telling me to take it slowly, I found myself falling for him, hard and quick, like a rookie carrying too much weight without a spotter. One frigid evening, as we went to our cars, he came to a halt and turned to face me, his demeanor solemn. "Emily, I'm not good at this fancy talking, and I don't have a smooth line to throw your way, but I like you, a lot. What do you say we make this official?" It was abrupt and honest. No games. There will be no delaying the inevitable. That was Jake, straightforward and all in. I grinned as my heart pounded in my chest. I say yes. Let's see where this goes. And with that, I was no longer merely a fitness trainer at the neighborhood gym. I was Jake's girlfriend, and eventually, his wife. Moving into Jake's mother's house shortly after we married was not exactly what I had envisioned for our happily ever after. Jake explained that it was essential to him because of his familial links. But living with his mother, Anna, and sister, Sophia, was difficult from the beginning. They did not hide their unhappiness with my entering the family, and things became more tense by the day. The house was usually busy, yet I somehow ended up with more than my fair share of responsibilities. After a long day at the gym, I'd go home to an endless list of responsibilities. The old washing machine was a nightmare. It broke down so frequently that I half joked it was personal against me. Nobody else seemed to notice or care, particularly Anna and Sophia. I recall one evening after dinner, I was attempting to fix that dreaded machine when I overheard them conversing in the kitchen. "She doesn't even know what she's doing," Sophia said, laughing without lowering her voice. "Watch, she'll flood the basement next." Their laughter rang down the corridor, wounding more than I cared to confess. I bit my tongue and concentrated on the task at hand. It was not just the washing machine. It was everything. From cooking to cleaning, my efforts were simply another source of fun for them. Cooking was the worst. Italian cooking was revered in this household, and my attempts were deemed blasphemous. I tried to follow Anna's recipes exactly, but nothing seemed to work. Sophia lurked in the doorway one night while I was struggling with a seemingly simple spaghetti recipe. "Is that supposed to look like that?" she inquired, a sneer crossing her lips. "It's nothing like Mom's." I gritted my teeth and stirred the sauce, which wouldn't thicken. "Well, I'm trying my best here." Sophia snorted. "Maybe your best isn't good enough. Did you ever think of that?" I wanted to respond, to defend myself. But what was the point? Everything would remain the same. Jake appeared to shrink slightly whenever his sister or mother chastised me. He never stood up for me. His quiet was as audible as their laughter. "Hey, Emily, just leave it," Jake said quietly later, attempting to avoid confrontation. "It's not worth it." Dinner time was a hassle. I had arranged the dishes on the table in the hopes of having a tranquil supper, but it seemed like I was sitting in a lion's den. "You know, in Italy, they'd probably ban you from the kitchen for this," Anna joked as she tried my food, and the others laughed along. "Yeah, maybe stick to what you know, gym stuff," Sophia would say, distributing the salt as if it were a peace gift I did not deserve. I'd nod, grin, and swallow the hurt, my irritation simmering like the sauce that never worked out. Living with Jake's family made each day feel like a war I was unprepared for. As my pregnancy progressed, the housework, which already felt like it was all on me, became increasingly stressful. Instead of receiving assistance or sympathy from Anna and Sophia, I sensed their hostility grow worse. One afternoon, I attempted to sweep the living room while moving slower than normal due to my increasing tummy. Anna strolled in, regarded me for a bit, and then gave out a sigh of displeasure. "Emily, you missed a spot over there, and look at how slow you're moving. This house is going to fall apart at this rate," she observed, pointing to a corner I hadn't yet arrived at. I straightened up, feeling a tightness in my back. "I'm doing the best I can, Anna. It's a bit harder with the baby," she scoffed, shaking her head. "In my time, we didn't let a little thing like pregnancy slow us down. You need to toughen up." The lack of sympathy hurt, and I bit my tongue to avoid snapping back. Sophia fared no better. Later that day, as I was folding laundry, she entered the room and began flipping through the clothing I had just carefully put. "You do know these aren't folded right, don't you? They should be able to stand up on their own, like how Mom taught us. Here, let me show you again." She tossed the shirt she was holding back into the pile, undoing what I had previously done. Then, with precise movements, she refolded the same garment. I felt my frustration increase. "Sophia, I appreciate the lesson, but I've folded clothes before. I'm not an idiot." She only raised her brow, a cold smile flashing on her lips. Could have fooled me. But hey, if you're okay with being mediocre, who am I to argue? Her words felt like a slap. For a time, I just stood there, watching her make my efforts appear futile. It was the same with cooking. Every dish I tried was met with criticism or downright ridicule, especially if I tried to create something Italian. One evening, I decided to try again, this time with a basic pasta dish that I believed I had nailed. Sophia arrived into the kitchen just as I was stirring the soup. "What's that supposed to be?" she inquired, staring into the pot with a doubtful expression. "It's spaghetti carbonara." "I thought it might be nice for dinner," I added, hoping for a difference in her typical gruff tone. She took a fork, tossed some pasta on it, and tasted it with an exaggerated distaste. "Nice? This is what you call nice? I wouldn't feed this to the dog. It's all wrong." I banged the pot's lid down slightly harder than necessary. "Well, it's what's for dinner. If you don't like it, you're welcome to make something else." Every day, the tension in the house increased, and Jake's absence exacerbated the situation. He was usually at the restaurant, always busy. When he was at home, he avoided all conflicts. When I tried to tell him about how his sister and mother treated me, he would just sigh and say something like, "I know it's tough, Emily, but try to hang in there. They'll warm up to you eventually, just give it time." After giving birth to my kid, I hoped things would improve. But the truth was quite the contrary. I had gained a significant amount of weight during my pregnancy, which became their new source of mocking. "Look at how much she's eating," Anna would chuckle as I tried to fuel myself for breastfeeding. "Are you feeding a child or a small army?" One day, as I was feeding my kid in the living room, I heard Sophia imitate a cow mooing from the kitchen. The sound cut through me. Tears stung my eyes. It was obvious that they considered me as nothing more than a cow, a utility for my son. I reached a breaking point. The relentless ridiculing and frigid treatment at home became unbearable. I needed a place for myself, where I wasn't just the scolded daughter-in-law or the underappreciated wife. That is when I decided to create my own YouTube channel and Instagram page. One morning, while Jake was at the restaurant and Sophia was out shopping, I put up my old camera in the corner of our tight guest room as my new impromptu gym. "I'm doing this," I whispered to myself while adjusting the angle. "For me. Not for them." I began filming easy training videos that could be done at home, particularly appealing to moms like myself who couldn't always get to the gym. Talking to a camera felt strange at first, as if I were addressing an audience who was interested in what I had to say. However, it soon became my haven. The first several videos were amateurish, with stiff commentary. "Hey everyone, it's Emily here, bringing you a quick 10-minute workout, perfect for busy moms. Let's get started." But as time passed, my follower count increased, as did my confidence. I bought a better camera, watched online courses on lighting and editing, and my little project began to take shape, something wholly mine. Sophia barged into the room one afternoon while I was filming a low-impact exercise sequence for a new video. "What the hell are you doing?" she said, her gaze jumping from the camera to mine. "You turning our home into your personal TV show now?" I paused the tape, my heart racing, not from the workout, but from the confrontation. "Yes, I am actually. It's something important to me. I need something of my own." Sophia grumbled and looked about with scorn. "You think you're some kind of star? Please. Get over yourself, Emily." Her words stung, but I was getting better at dealing with her jabs. "Well, it's not like I have your approval for anything else around here. I might as well do one thing I enjoy." Sophia rolled her eyes and marched away. But I didn't stop the camera for long. I resumed my session with a stronger voice than before. My digital profile rose, and so did the prospects. Brands began contacting me, offering free things to include in my movies. Then came the offers to sponsor posts. The first time a brand offered me money to promote their product, I was taken aback. "I can't believe they're paying me for this," I said to Jake over dinner one night, eager to express my delight. "That's great, Emily," he said, his tone preoccupied by his restaurant issues. "Just keep it quiet, okay? Mom and Sophia don't need to know about this." As I returned to the dishes, a notice appeared on my phone. Another comment. Another follower. Another step away from their disdain, and toward something perfectly commonplace yet utterly mine. "You're doing amazing, Emily. Thanks for sharing your journey." The comment reads, "My channel was no longer just a hobby. It was a thriving business, generating more revenue than Jake's floundering eatery." Soon, I was sending him $2,000 each month to cover household expenses, making it appear like his contribution. Despite my accomplishments, Anna and Sophia continued to treat me as a freeloader. "She does nothing around here, just prances about making her silly videos," Anna would spit when she thought I was out of earshot. Sophia repeated her mother's thoughts, adding her own remarks about how I should do more housework, like a real woman. Then Jake's restaurant had a hard period. One evening, he approached me, looking more weary than I'd seen him in months. "Emily, the restaurant needs a cash injection, badly. Can you help out?" His eyes were begging. I did not hesitate, transferring $10,000 for what he described as urgent developments. He was truly thankful. But it wasn't long before he started begging for more. "Just another $55,000 for the bills this month," he remarked quietly, almost humiliated. I consented because I could afford it, and he was still my son's father, whom he adored. But, deep down, I sensed the imbalance deepening. Not just financially, but also in our relationship. Life at Jake's family home was always difficult. But it became awful when Sophia married and brought her husband, Mark, into our home. The house was full. And any sense of solitude or tranquility I had created for myself and my baby evaporated suddenly. Anna, never one to mince words, began calling me lazy and a parasite right in front of my face. "You do nothing around here," she'd say, as I struggled to balance my online business and keeping an eye on my baby. "Just taking up space." It didn't help that Sophia was expecting her first child, and Anna made it apparent that they wanted more space, hinting that my kid and I were in the way. "Soon there'll be another baby in the house, and we can't have freeloaders taking up space," Anna remarked one evening, her gaze drawn to my direction. The atmosphere became cooler, and then, just when things couldn't get much worse, Jake stated that he needed to leave town for a few weeks to handle essential restaurant affairs in another city. He packed up and went, hugging me and our baby goodbye, ignorant to the storm he would leave behind. I attempted to keep things normal by taking my son to school and finishing my videos in the park. However, the day everything actually went apart began like any other, until it didn't. After picking up my son from school, we walked home and spoke about his day. But when we turned the corner, my stomach fell. Our stuff was stacked up on the front doorway, including suitcases, bags of clothes, and even my son's toys. Confused and heartbroken, I rang the doorbell. Anna and Sophia approached the window with chilly looks, unmoved by the sight of a mother and kid stranded outside. They opened the door just enough to speak through, but not enough to let us in. "You need to find somewhere else to stay," Anna stated, her voice stern and uncompromising. I looked at her shocked. "What are you talking about? What about Jake? What will I tell him?" I asked, my voice rising with fear and rage. Sophia chuckled in a nasty, cutting tone. "Tell him whatever you want. He's not here to care, is he?" I frantically tried phoning Jake, but my calls remained unanswered. I had no alternative but to sink deeper into despair and hatred. With no other options, I gathered our belongings and secured a room at a neighboring motel. Sitting in that sterile, darkly lit room with my confused and upset son, I felt something shift inside me. This was more than simply a brief getaway. It was a forced eviction from a life I could no longer bear. I had just finished unpacking our things when my phone vibrated with a new message. It came from Sophia. That was strange. We rarely interacted directly, especially since the fallout. Her message was surprisingly cheerful. "Thought you might want to see what your beloved husband has been up to. A link is also provided." My curiosity piqued. My anxiety increased in my chest. I clicked the link. It redirected me to a social media page with images of Jake. But not on a work trip. The photos showed him cozying up to another woman, having candlelight meals and strolling down the beach with his arms wrapped around her. What is the newest photo's timestamp? Just yesterday. I sat there numb, my phone slipping slightly from my grip as the realization dawned on me. Jake wasn't only away for business. He was living a completely different life, without us. Anger, hot and bitter, welled up inside me. But before I could drown in it, I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve. "Mommy, are you okay?" My son's sweet voice, filled with sincere compassion, drew me back from the edge. I feigned a smile and scooped him up in my arms. "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Just a little tired, that's all." I sat there, staring at the television, a mix of rage and betrayal running through me. All this time, I had been the financial backbone for Jake's faltering restaurant and his ungrateful family, who had essentially discarded me and my baby like garbage. And here he was, leading a double life, at my expense. My phone buzzed nonstop for the next week with Jake's calls. When I eventually spoke, his voice was filled with false worry. "Emily, where are you guys? I heard about what happened. You should come back. We have bills to sort out, and the restaurant needs more funding." His statements made my blood boil, but I maintained a neutral tone. "Sure, Jake, we can discuss it. I'll come by tomorrow." "Great, I really think it's best to handle these things in person," he said, relieved. After hanging up, I felt a chilly determination descend over me. He had no idea I knew about his affair. And he had no idea I had no intention of being the forgiving wife who paid his debts. Tomorrow's meeting would be pivotal, and I was prepared. Dropping up my son at school that morning felt like the quiet before the storm. As I traveled to my mother-in-law Anna's house, where Jake, Anna, and my pregnant sister-in-law Sophia would be waiting, my stomach churned with nervousness and determination. When I arrived, Jake appeared relieved, if not delighted to see me. Unlike Anna and Sophia, whose expressions were filled with dissatisfaction. I quickly dug out the divorce papers from my suitcase and presented them to Jake. As he scanned the paperwork, his eyes widened in disbelief. Anna and Sophia smirked, believing it was their victory. But when I turned to face them, the smirk evaporated instantly. "Don't be too quick to celebrate," I cautioned, my voice calm but sharp. "You've been living off my efforts all this time." Jake's face dropped as he confessed to them. "The restaurant, it isn't doing well. It hasn't been for a long time." Anna and Sophia's joy faded, replaced by horror and rage. They immediately turned on him, their earlier delight transforming into wrath. "You've been keeping this from us?" Anna yelled. Sophia yelled, "How could you let this happen?" They were angry not at Jake's lies, but at the loss of their financial safety net. Sophia, the arrogant one, scoffed at me. "Well, since Jake makes less than you, he'll just have to file for alimony. How's that for justice?" Jake perked up and nodded enthusiastically, as if he had just discovered a way to win. I nearly chuckled at the stupidity. "That's where you're wrong, Sophia," I corrected, turning to face them both. "And Jake, you won't see a cent from me, not for alimony, not for anything." Jake's arrogant grin vanished. "What? That's not how this works." "Oh, but it is," I answered. "Because I know about the affair." His face lost its color. "How did you?" I tilted my head, pretending innocence. "Your sister sent me everything, pictures, dates, and locations." I gestured to Sophia, whose face had turned pale. "Thanks to her, I have all the evidence I need." The room burst in turmoil. A flurry of accusations, denials, and frantic explanations flew between them. I let them sink in their own muck for a time before I spoke out. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice frigid. "I'm taking back everything I paid for." The room became silent. Every appliance, every piece of furniture, everything. As truth dawned on them, their arguments came to an end. I'd previously arranged for movers. Anna and Sophia worried as they began carrying away the refrigerator, washing machine, flat-screen television, and even the beautiful blender I had purchased for them last Christmas. "You can't do this?" Anna exclaimed, gazing helplessly. "We need those things." I caught her gaze, my tone steady but not harsh. "I did this? And I need them too." The movers kept working, cleaning out about half of the house. As I watched them remove the last of my belongings, I felt lighter than I had in years. A weight lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer obligated to this house, these people, or their deception. I returned my gaze to Jake, who appeared little and forlorn, his hopes for quick money dashed. "Take care of your sister and mother, Jake. That's your job now," I murmured politely, turning to go. As I walked away, I realized it wasn't just a physical departure. It was my final step out of their deceptive clutches, a step toward regaining my life and ensuring a better future for my son and me. Overall, the divorce was a relief rather than a hardship. I battled for compensation for Jake's adultery and obtained alimony for our son. My lawyer handled everything, making the procedure run as smoothly as possible given the circumstances. Jake's family's lives changed considerably as well. Without my financial backing, his restaurant went bankrupt and couldn't survive. The family house was sold to pay off debts, demonstrating their unsustainable lifestyle. Meanwhile, Anna and Sophia scrambled to contact me, their messages a combination of apologies and desperate begs for aid. Despite everything, I couldn't allow myself to be drawn back into their madness. I immediately blocked their numbers. Sophia's husband abandoned her, and now the entire family, Jake, his mother, his sister, and her child, is crowded into a small rented apartment. They created this difficult position for themselves. In contrast, life for me and Alex is improving. We've fallen into a comfortable routine in our own rented flat, which feels more like home every day. My YouTube channel and Instagram page have taken off, resonating with women, particularly new mothers, who are striving to get back into shape. Seeing the beneficial impact of my work has sparked a new idea. Create online fitness courses designed exclusively for postpartum mothers. I'm enthused about the possibilities and the opportunity to assist others who have been in my position. There was a lot to accomplish, but for the first time in a long time, the future appeared bright and full of possibilities. I had a deep feeling of serenity here, in our tiny sanctuary, with my sons laughing booming off the walls. We had made it through the storm. And now was our turn to shine. I stopped babysitting for my Sil due to poor health. She didn't understand and even accused me of stealing money and even sued me for defamation. For the past 2 years, I, Arya, 33F, have been the primary babysitter for my sister-in-law Gui, 37F. Her children, Mia and Noah, were adorable, and despite Guiofir's entitled demeanor, I really enjoyed spending time with them. I recall when Mia was a toddler and Noah was a newborn. I would spend hours with them while Guiofir did whatever she wanted. I would play games with Mia, assist her with her arts and crafts, and even read books to Noah. It was a lot of fun. Even though I didn't have my own children, I became really devoted to them. However, things began to alter a few months ago. I was diagnosed with a chronic disease, which affected me more than I anticipated. I had to dramatically change my lifestyle. I used to be full of energy, constantly doing something, whether it was running errands or assisting with family matters. But suddenly, my body couldn't keep up with the speed. I was continuously exhausted, and even basic things felt like mountains I had to conquer. The doctor gave me severe advice. I needed to reduce physical and mental stress. At first, I attempted to ignore it, hoping to get through. But it rapidly became evident that this was not something I could just dismiss. Some days, I couldn't even get out of bed without feeling absolutely exhausted. So, regrettably, I informed Gui that I would no longer be able to babysit regularly. I described everything. How my health had changed and how I needed to prioritize self-care. I wasn't seeking compassion, but rather understanding. But instead of providing the assistance I expected, Guiofir snapped. I vividly recall her precise words. "What do you even do all day?" It stung. I felt as though I had been slapped. But I tried to remain cool. I wasn't just lounging around all day, I was in constant pain and exhausted, which she couldn't understand. Yet here she was, making it appear that I was simply being lazy. It hurt. She went on to add that babysitting her kids wasn't even difficult, and that I was selfish for not assisting. I attempted to explain again, but reasoning with Guiofir is like talking to a brick block. She didn't listen. No matter what I stated, she was convinced I was exaggerating. I couldn't keep responding to her, so I decided to stop and hope she'd let it go. But she didn't. Every few days, she'd message me, wondering when I'd start babysitting again or expressing her desperate need for assistance. I felt like I was being guilted into giving in. At first, I tried to be strong and stick to my decisions. I was really concerned about my health and realized I needed to listen to my body. But after a few weeks, I began to have a creeping sensation of shame. I kept thinking of Mia and Noah. They were really sweet, and I felt like I was leaving them. It made me doubt myself. Was I being selfish? Perhaps I was simply overreacting to my condition. Perhaps I could still help out a little, just not as much as before. But then I'd remember how my body felt after overdoing it. That notion would bring me back to the facts of the situation. It wasn't only about me anymore. It was about my health, well-being, and my ability to care for myself over time. I didn't want to end myself in a worse situation because I felt guilty. In the end, Gui did not respond as I had expected. She never apologized or acknowledged how my health was hurting me. Instead, she sulked for several weeks. I didn't hear anything from her, other than the occasional passive-aggressive remark. It was difficult to deal with, but I knew I needed to keep my distance for my own safety. A month later, my husband and I received an invitation to a family dinner at my in-laws' residence. I honestly had mixed thoughts about going. I hadn't seen Guiofir since our last furious argument, and the prospect of her approaching me again made my stomach turn. But it was family, and I didn't want to cause any problems, so I agreed to go. I hoped things would be cordial and that Gui would have had the opportunity to reflect on her actions. Of course, that did not happen. I could feel the tension in the air from the moment we stepped through the door. Gui wasted no time making me the center of attention in the worst way possible. She greeted us with her smug look, which made me feel like she was already planning something. As we sat down at the dinner table, everyone was conversing, catching up, and generally having fun. It appeared to be a usual family dinner, until Guiofir decided to speak up. "So, Arya," she murmured. "Are you still too sick to help out with my kids? Or is it just an excuse because you're too lazy to get off the couch?" The room went completely silent. I could feel my face burning as I struggled to remain calm. I'm not one to make a spectacle, but the comment hit me right in the gut. I had not informed my family members about my situation. My heart was beating, and I noticed everyone at the table shifting uneasily in their seats. I took a long breath and responded, attempting to keep my voice calm. I've already explained my condition to you, Gui. It's not an excuse. I'm just trying to take care of my health. She did not even flinch. Instead, she smiled and remarked, "Health, huh? Maybe babysitting would do you some good. Get you off your pity train." She chuckled as if she had just told the best joke of the century, while the rest of the table exchanged uneasy glances. Then the rest of the family members began asking me what had happened, and I had to tell them everything. I was outraged, but I didn't want to exacerbate the situation, especially in front of my in-laws. I merely gazed at my plate and clenched my fists beneath the table. I knew I had to maintain my composure, but inside I was furious. I wanted to say so many things, like how she had no idea what I was going through and how her lack of empathy was truly mind-boggling, but I held my tongue. Fortunately, my husband was not having any of this. He rushed in and defended me before I could say anything. "Gui, that's enough," he remarked, his voice stern yet calm. "You can't talk to Arya like that. She's been through a lot, and you need to respect her boundaries." Even with his help, it appeared that the harm had been done. Gui was not one to back down lightly, and it didn't take long before she began making passive-aggressive remarks. "I just don't get it," she told me with a straight face. "It's not like I'm asking you to do anything hard. Babysitting is just watching the kids for a few hours. I don't understand what the big deal is." Everyone else at the table simply stared at their food, hoping that the conversation would cease. But it did not. Gui continued to press. "Maybe if you actually helped out, you wouldn't be so tired all the time." At this moment, I was finished. I was about to snap, but I did not want to cause a scene. So I took a big breath, feigned a smile and said, "Gui, I've already told you that I can't babysit on a regular basis right now. If you don't understand that, perhaps we should just leave it at that." She didn't say anything after that, just looked at me curiously. I attempted to dismiss those ideas and concentrate on the fact that I had stood up for myself. But it was difficult not to feel insignificant in the face of Gui's complete disregard for my sentiments. The rest of the evening was as miserable as you might expect. Gui maintained her distance, but the tension in the air was strong, and I felt unable to relax. Unfortunately, her resentment did not stop there. Oh no, it got much worse. A few days after the family meal, I was sitting at home, trying to relax after another long day, when there came a tap on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened the door, I was surprised to see a police officer standing on my porch. My heart sank into my stomach as I struggled to make sense of what was occurring. I stood there in full shock as the police officer claimed that he was coming to investigate a theft report. Apparently, Gui had filed a lawsuit accusing me of taking money from her home. The words barely registered in my head at first. A theft report? Against me? I was unable to make sense of it. I immediately called Gui to try to acquire some information. My hands shook as I held the phone to my ear, my heart thumping in my chest. The phone rang for a few seconds before she answered. "Gui," he replied. "What is going on? Why are the police at my door? Why would you accuse me of stealing from you?" She wasted no time flinging insults at me. "You think you can just ditch my kids and get away with it?" she said over the phone. "Maybe this will teach you not to mess with me. I'm not going to let you get away with anything." I was shocked. This woman had truly gone to this length to make my life miserable. The claim was ridiculous, and I couldn't believe I was actually having this conversation. But it wasn't about reason or logic for her, it was about vengeance. She appeared to be eager to go to any length to punish me for setting boundaries and asserting my rights. I tried to remain calm, but my rage was boiling over. "Gui," I muttered through clenched teeth, "I didn't steal anything from you. This is insane. Why would you even make something like that up?" But she laughed, as if she relished seeing me upset. "I'm not talking to you about this anymore," she said abruptly, hanging up the phone. I stood there in shock, staring at my phone. How could somebody be so petty and malicious? I had no idea how to digest what had just happened. The police officer was standing there, and Gui had gone as far as accusing me of stealing. Stealing. It was ridiculous, and yet here I was, forced into this nightmare. Fortunately, the police officer recognized that something was not adding up. After a little talk, he had begun to see through her tale. Maybe I was an easy target for her. But I had no motivation, no opportunity, and certainly no experience with anything like this. In fact, I had been home the whole day the money allegedly went missing, and I had a solid alibi. The officer even checked our security camera to verify my whereabouts. It wasn't long until the entire situation imploded. The officer was courteous and professional, apologizing for any difficulty and assured me that everything had been resolved. But the harm had already been done. Gui had attempted to drag me through the mud, and I had to cope with the consequences of her petty behavior. Despite the fact that I was not in trouble, the entire experience left me shaken. Her scheme backfired spectacularly. When Mark found out about the police complaint and what Gui had done, he was furious. I'd never seen him that angry before. He'd always been the calmer, more patient one in their relationship, but this was the final straw. From what I could tell, he hadn't been pleased with her recent behavior, but the theft claim appeared to be the tipping point. It felt like something inside him cracked. He marched up to her and demanded she apologize to me. Of course, Gui refused. She was too proud, headstrong, and, frankly, humiliated to accept her mistake. I only learned about all of this after Mark came to my house to apologize on her behalf. To be honest, I wasn't delighted with their relationship. It seemed strange to be caught in the middle of their turmoil. But at the same time, I felt vindicated. She had tried to ruin my life with her falsehoods, and the consequences were now catching up with her. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that things were finally unraveling for her. The saddest thing for Gui was when news of the police report reached the school where she worked. Gui had been a teacher for years, and I believe she had always assumed her position was secure. However, after the school learned about the fabricated theft claim and the participation of the police, things began to fall apart for her in a dramatic manner. While no legal charges were filed against her, the fact that she had contacted the authorities in such a petty and vindictive manner was enough to ruin her reputation. I couldn't help but feel bad about how much I enjoyed watching her life collapse. I knew it wasn't polite to enjoy someone else's demise, but after everything she'd put me through, it almost felt justified. It was as if the cosmos was finally serving her a dose of her own medication. For so long, she moved around with a sense of entitlement, as if the world revolved around her. And suddenly, everything was falling apart. Of course, none of this was without consequences for me. As much as I wanted to move on and leave this mess behind me, it seemed like every time I took a step forward, I was drawn back into the drama. I began to feel sorry for the folks in our family who were caught in the middle, trying to decide which side to take. A few family members felt sorry for her and suspected that I had exaggerated or misread her intentions. But for the most part, they supported me. Still, there were awkward occasions at family gatherings when I had to act as if nothing was wrong when, in reality, things had gotten exceedingly strained. Gui's life has fallen apart, and it appears that she is blaming everything on me. She lost it during another one of our family confrontations, pointing her finger and yelling that I was to blame for everything that had gone wrong. She exclaimed that if I hadn't been so theatrical during babysitting, none of this would have occurred. It seemed as if everything that had gone wrong in her life was now my fault. But I had already learned to maintain my composure. I did not participate in the yelling match. Instead, I answered calmly, "Gui, I didn't make you mock me at dinner. I didn't force you to file a false police report. You did this to yourself." It felt strangely empowering to speak those words. For once, I was not going to let her twist the story or make me feel like I was wrong. I won't lie. As I watched her spiral, I felt a little sense of justice. Seeing someone so toxic face the repercussions of their actions seemed natural, even if I didn't take joy in her suffering. I'd endured enough of her harshness. I had to tell myself that this wasn't some small victory for me. It was merely the result of her own actions. The fact was, I never wanted to be a part of this drama in the first place. I merely requested some space to concentrate on my health and well-being. But Gui interpreted that request as a personal attack. Everything that followed, her allegations, lies, and attempts to tarnish my reputation, was entirely her doing. I was not the one who escalated things. But I wasn't going to back down. Gui no longer talks to me, and honestly, I'm perfectly okay with that. If she cannot respect my boundaries, we cannot recover our relationship. I've realized that certain individuals are simply not intended to be in your life, no matter how close you were before. I have moved on from the drama and am finally at peace with it. The only thing I regret, if you can call it that, is the impact this entire situation has had on her children. Mia and Noah were completely innocent throughout all of this, and I have always loved them as if they were my own. I remain hoping that kids will grow up to be kinder and more understanding than their mother. I do not want children to inherit her bitterness and venom. However, the situation does not end here. Gui now faces serious consequences for making a fraudulent police report. I honestly didn't expect her to be held accountable, but it appears she is being investigated for making a fraudulent allegation. It appears that she may be required to pay a fine or face some type of penalty. Frankly, it could not have occurred to a more worthy individual. I'm not sure what the legal implications will be for her, but it appears that she'll have to deal with it one way or another. Of course, even as the walls close in on her, she refuses to accept responsibility for her deeds. Gui began calling me in an uncharacteristically out-of-touch manner. She's actually asking me to pay her fine. Yes, you read that correctly. She wants me to pay for the mess she made, as if I owe her anything after everything she's put me through. It's truly comical, and I'm just sitting here shaking my head. At first, I had no idea how to reply. It's not like I want to go back and forth with her. Every time we communicate, I feel like I'm taking a step back in my healing journey. But this was different. This was her attempt to manipulate me one more time. And I was not having it. I've spent the last 2 months focusing on myself and regaining my peace. And this phone call felt like a slap to the face. She had no right to ask for anything after how she treated me. But then she brought her children into it and attempted to make me feel bad. I don't know what to do now. Do you have any suggestions? Update. 1. Hello, folks. I know some of you have asked about my condition, and I'd like to clarify that I don't feel comfortable posting too many specifics about it here. I hope you understand. But I will admit that it causes me to feel physically weary pretty quickly. I'm still getting used to it, and it's been a challenge. I'm learning to pace myself, but it's not always simple to explain, especially given other people's expectations. A couple of you also wondered how I ended up babysitting for Gui, so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it to provide some perspective. Several years ago, I lost my job. To be honest, I had a difficult time. I'd been working in a tough capacity that frequently left me feeling burned out. After losing that job, I was at a crossroads, wondering what to do next. I didn't want to rush into another full-time job that would be equally hectic, so I decided to take some time to figure things out. Around that time, I acquired a part-time remote job that proved to be a true blessing. It's flexible, pays well, and I can work from home, which gives me more control over my schedule. Honestly, it's been a terrific balance that I've been able to maintain. Even though it is only part-time, my husband has an excellent job, which helps. We've been able to maintain a decent financial situation together. So, things worked out, even though it wasn't the job route I had planned. Now that I was working from home and had more spare time, I began looking for activities to occupy my days. That's how I ended up babysitting for Gui. You know, Gui and I have always been related, but our relationship has had its ups and downs. She's not the easiest person to get along with, but when I lost my job, I had a lot of free time and figured I could help out with her kids. It began when she had to leave for a trip with her pals and her regular babysitter canceled at the last minute. She asked if I could step in, and I agreed, despite my reservations about the concept. I assumed it would be something transitory, but it eventually became my second job. She kept asking me to babysit, even when she wasn't on a trip. Her children, Mia and Noah, are wonderful, and I actually enjoy spending time with them, so I didn't fear it. But this is when things began to become difficult. What began as a courtesy quickly became something that seemed like an obligation. Gui grew to rely on me more and more, and before long, I was babysitting on a regular basis. I didn't mind at first, but after a while, it felt like I was doing it for her convenience rather than out of a real desire to assist. It wasn't long before I was juggling a part-time job with babysitting, which was okay when I was feeling well. However, when my situation began to worsen, I felt stretched too thin. Looking back, I can't help but wonder whether I should have established boundaries earlier. I guess I wanted to be the kind, helpful family member who could do everything. However, in the end, it left me exhausted. It's acceptable to say no. Even if someone else is vying for your time and attention, it is okay to prioritize your own needs. Update 2. Hello folks, I realize it's been a while, but I finally have some updates. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who contacted out and offered support during the crazy situation with Gui. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I'm doing fine now. So here's where things are. Gui did wind up paying a fee for filing a fraudulent police report, which surprised me given how swiftly it happened. She was further warned that repeating such behavior could result in more serious repercussions. To be honest, I'm glad she had to face some consequences for the disaster she created. It seemed like justice. However, I am not exactly celebrating it. I believe Gui would prefer to pretend nothing happened and go on, but that isn't how this works, right? The more shocking development, however, involves Gui and Mark. They are now separated. That came as a tremendous shock to the family. I never imagined it would come to this, but things definitely reached a breaking point for them. Mark was enraged when he learned about everything Gui did, especially the phony report. That was the last straw for him, and it wasn't long before they began living apart. They have been working on their relationship, however. According to what I've heard, they're in counseling, and Mark appears to want to attempt to make things better. I'm not sure what will happen to them in the long run, but there's still a chance they can work things out, if both of them are ready to put in the effort. At this point, I've removed myself from their drama. It's difficult to care when you've been wrongfully accused of something you didn't commit. Gui still blames me for all that transpired. She refuses to speak to me, which is actually rather reassuring. I don't think I could take much more of her toxicity. There's just so much a person can take until they have to keep their own peace. And right now, I'm doing everything I can to focus on my health and happiness. But, matter how toxic things were, I felt horrible for her. I understand her actions were the result of her personal problems, but that doesn't excuse what she did to me. I learned the hard way that just because someone is kin does not imply they have your best interests in mind. Even if you strive to help them, some people will manipulate and take advantage of you. And at some point, you must draw a line. The fact that I can no longer see Mia and Noah has made things a little more difficult. I miss those children. They were an important part of my life for a long time, and despite the difficulties with Gui, I actually enjoyed spending time with them. They're both brilliant and sweet children. It's weird not to be a part of their life anymore. I know they miss me, but I'm not sure if I'll see them again. Gui has made it clear that she wants nothing to do with me, and I do not want to overstep my boundaries. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I know it's been almost a month since my last update, but I finally have some new content for you. A lot has happened, and I feel like I've been on a roller coaster recently. Thank you to everyone who has reached out to me. Your warm words and support mean everything to me. So, let us start with Gui and Mark. Believe it or not, they're back together now. Yeah, I was startled too. Given all that had happened, the drama, the accusations, and everything else, I assumed that was the end of their relationship. However, they managed to resolve the situation. It's bittersweet for me. As glad as I am that they are finding a path forward, I still haven't seen Mia or Noah. Honestly, I miss those children. I spent a lot of time with them, and they became an important part of my life. But with everything that happened, I can't seem to find a way back into their life. I know Gui has made it clear that she no longer wants me connected, and I do not want to break any limits. But I can't stop feeling like I'm losing out. I still think about them all the time and hope they are doing well. On a personal note, my illness has deteriorated in recent weeks. I won't go into too much detail, but let's just say I've been battling more physically. I was doing okay for a while until I had some flare-ups that brought me down. It's been a challenging few weeks, and there were times when I wondered how much longer I could continue. I was fatigued, and there were days when getting out of bed seemed impossible. I've been seeing my doctor more often and changing my treatment plan. Slowly but surely, I'm feeling better. But, I'm not going to lie, there's an underlying concern that things could turn terrible again at any point. I simply need to take it one day at a time and be gentle to myself. I'm grateful that my hubby has been so supportive throughout this. He's been an incredible rock for me, and I'm not sure what I'd do without him. Anyway, that's where I am right now. I'm grateful for the help I've received, and I hope everyone is doing well. I'll let you know if anything more happens, but for now, I'm simply taking it one day at a time. Thank you again for being there for me. It truly means the world. At Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million and my family demanded I give it to her, claiming she deserved it more. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. So I'm Sarah, 38, female, and I need to get this off my chest. Do you know those family dynamics in which one child can do no wrong while the other appears to be invisible? Yes, welcome to my life. Everything was very typical until I was 8. I was an only kid, and while my parents were not particularly warm and fuzzy, they were present, I suppose. Mom would help me with my homework, and Dad would occasionally take me fishing on Lake St. Clair. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were fine. Then came the night that would change everything. I recall my Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 a.m. and telling me to pack a suitcase because Mom was in the hospital. My sister, Rachel, was on her way, but something was wrong. She wasn't meant to arrive for another 2 months. The following few weeks were a flurry of hospital visits and hush chats. Rachel was really little. She looked like one of my baby dolls, but with all these tubes and cables, I wasn't allowed to touch her or get too close. That was the first time I felt it, an invisible wall forming between me and the rest of my family. When they eventually brought Rachel home, our house turned into a sterilized bubble. Mom had an obsession with germs. I'm talking industrial strength disinfection throughout, hand sanitizer stations in each room, and constant cleaning. The harsh odor of bleach still causes me distress to this day. But here's the bit that really messed me up. Whenever I showed the slightest symptom of illness, I was whisked off to either Grandma Marie's or Aunt Kelly's house. I mean every time. Sneeze once, pack your bags. A mild cough, you're off to see Grandma. At first, I thought it was enjoyable. Grandma Marie would make cookies, and Aunt Kelly had a fantastic collection of Nancy Drew books that I was working my way through. But children are not stupid. After a while, you begin to understand what is actually going on. You are not being sent away on adventures. You are being handled as a threat. As if your entire existence could damage your beloved sister. I tried everything to gain their attention in a healthier manner. Honestly, everything? Got all A's? Mom would scarcely look up from Rachel's most recent doctor's appointment calendar. Won first prize in the scientific fair with a project about renewable energy. Dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage since Rachel is allergic to cardboard dust. Is this even a thing? The real kicker came when I was 12. For months, I'd been practicing for the school talent show, teaching myself to perform Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano. I know it's a little too obvious. Rachel had a 99.1 degree Fahrenheit fever on the night of the show. Guess who did not have anyone in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, including both sets of grandparents, attended Rachel's 15-minute flute recital, during which she essentially killed hot cross buns. Rachel immediately learned how to use the system. By the age of 7, she had outgrown any real health difficulties, but that didn't stop her from performing. Headache? Must remain home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else, guess who, should perform her tasks. Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to have the deadline extended. I began spending more and more time in my room, immersed in books about art history and antiques. It's funny how life works out sometimes. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener, so it was the only place she wouldn't go. Do you know what is actually wrong? When she pretended to be sick, a part of me felt grateful. At the very least, I'd be taken to Grandma Marie's, where someone would ask about my day or be interested in what I was about. Grandma was the one who sparked my interest in vintage jewelry. She had an incredible collection of costume pieces that she let me organize and catalog. I suppose I should have regarded it as prophetic. The worst thing wasn't even the clear favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to excuse their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands that her sister has special needs. Number I did not comprehend. I was a child who didn't understand why having a good immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how these years shaped me. The persistent message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient to be around doesn't just go away. But hey, at least it taught me to be self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own cheerleader. High school, the majority of people either loved or loathed it. Me, I regarded it as a ticket out. While Rachel was establishing her drama empire in middle school, I was laying the groundwork for my own escape. And let me tell you, nothing inspires you to accomplish more than knowing that no one will do it for you. Remember how I said I spent hours sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry collection? That taught me a valuable lesson, the need for systematic organization and attention to detail. In high school, I approached everything with the same perspective. My desk at home resembled something out of an organization magazine. Color-coded notes, meticulously organized study plans, and everything had its place. Rachel teased me about it, calling me Rain Man. Very great, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible, no one is monitoring your failures or successes. So do whatever the heck you want. I joined every club that would not interfere with my part-time employment at Carson's Diner. Thank you to Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents had forgotten. Debate team? Check. Who is the National Honor Society president? Check. Who is the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper? Check. The debate team was when I truly found my voice. There's something quite rewarding about shattering someone's argument while maintaining complete composure. It also taught me how to negotiate, which I didn't realize at the time but would be useful later. I've won states twice. Rachel had major soccer games, therefore my parents were unable to attend both competitions. She was on the C team, did not even play. The game changer the junior year was when things truly became interesting. I took the SAT and received a flawless score. Not like, oh, pretty good, perfect. I mean, perfect. 1600. You know how many people receive that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for almost 20 minutes, convinced it was an error. I rushed home to tell my parents. I realized this is stupid. Mom was in the kitchen assisting Rachel with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. My reaction. Mom. Look, I got a perfect SAT score. Mama. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Rachel, you're correct. Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. She said. Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those SAT results someplace. Never got pinned on the fridge. But Rachel's C+ in English? That infant received primo refrigerator real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. College applications. The college application procedure was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without informing anyone. I wrote all of my own essays, gathered my own recommendations, and handled all of the financial assistance paperwork myself. My guidance advisor, Mr. Chen, was the true MVP. My parents were too busy to help me with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school. Then acceptances began to arrive. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan, and each one comes with a scholarship offer. I stored them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Rachel discovered them. They'd suddenly shifted their focus entirely to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or some nonsense like that. The day I received my full ride offer from UMich, Rachel joined JV cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family feast? Hint, I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But, you know what? The scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, lodging and board are all included, as is a book allowance. I could finally leave that house, where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I received my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and grieved for an hour. Not sad tears. There were tears of relief. When I told my parents at supper that I was going to UMich, they were ecstatic. He said, Michigan? But that's so far. What if Rachel needs you? She replied, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly. Rachel is crying. Oh my God, finally. Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. The summer before college I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner to save money. Carol, bless her heart, always gave me additional tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie at the conclusion of my shifts. She also taught me a vital skill, how to recognize genuine people in a society full of fakes. Baby, she'd tell me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at Michigan? My folks couldn't attend because, surprise, Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm room, and gave me a $500 envelope. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she told me. She's so proud of you. Later, I learned that Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I promised myself, I was going to create such a wonderful life that being overlooked would be inconceivable. Not for vengeance. Nothing to prove to my family. But what about the 8-year-old girl who used to get sent to Grandma's house for sneezing? College and the beginning of something new. College went by in a flurry of all-nighters, instant ramen, and heavenly independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. Not that my folks noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level job at Everett and Phillips Auction House in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A genuine high-end establishment, many old money clients, that type of transaction. I began with their estate sales business, which involved documenting the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid the bills. The breakthrough. My first several months were very standard, logging countless china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, and so on. Next followed the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who had died with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a huge collection of costume jewelry. Rooms filled with the material? This is where those hours at Grandma Marie's came in useful. I'm looking through this stack of jewelry when something catches my attention. It's an Art Deco brooch. Nothing really showy, yet something about it felt different. The weight was unsuitable for costume jewelry. The clasping mechanism was far too complex for a copycat. I believe I spent my whole lunch break that day researching old jewelry markers and signatures. I ended up staying late at the office to use the company's membership to several antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I got that this was not costume jewelry. It was the real stuff. Problem was, I was the new girl. Nobody would believe me if I claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I meticulously prepared my argument. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even used some of my pitiful excuse for savings to pay for an online gemology course. Finally mustered the guts to approach my boss, Mr. Harrison. I brought the entire presentation, which included comparative images, historical documentation, and the works. The conversation went something like this. My response: "Sir, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection." Harrison, scarcely looking up from his phone, says, "Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces." "You are correct. I know, but look at these maker's marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures." Harrison, finally paying attention: "Where did you learn all of this?" My reply was, I did some research." Long story short, the costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. It turns out that it was part of a limited collection created for some European set in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Harrison started to trust me after that. He began giving me other artifacts to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless pastime of sorting antique jewels acquired real significance. I devoted myself to learning everything I could about vintage jewelry. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales, researching items. Even began a small notepad to document various authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered with printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house started getting results. I was discovering important items that others had overlooked, developing contacts with collectors, and knowing the market. My commission checks became larger. For the first time in my life, I was not simply surviving, I was also saving money. Family? Still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still went to like a fool, the discourse went like this. "Mom, Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? This is me. Auction house. And yes. Actually, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece." Rachel interrupts. "Oh my God, speaking of jewelry. You guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall." But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had discovered something wholly mine. Something I was actually excellent at. Something unrelated to being Rachel's sister or family disappointment. The Rothschild collection. Then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my employment at the auction business. A massive estate. Old money family. There's a lot of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team that cataloged their jewelry collection. And that's when I noticed it. A fairly commonplace Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had missed. I spent 3 days investigating it. I barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, which was supposed to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison summoned me to his office. I believed I was being promoted. Instead, he said something that completely changed the situation. "Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business." Initially, I shrugged it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? However, the notion took root. I began doing modest freelance authentication projects on the side. Word spread that I had a terrific site. Private collectors began contacting us directly. One night, I was sitting in my modest apartment, surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools that I had gradually accumulated, when I had an epiphany. This is something I could actually do. I could create anything on my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a large debt against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a small office space in a less desirable area of town. People believed I was insane. Perhaps I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant that was about the size of a college dorm room. The rent was low because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only functioned if you sat in the corner by the window. But it was mine. The struggle. The first few months were interesting, and by interesting, I mean scary. I'd awaken at 4 a.m. with cold sweats, calculating how many months till my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a rope around my neck. My office furnishings comprised of, I purchased a card table from Goodwill. A chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, it was thoroughly cleaned. However, in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything. And my experience at the auction house provided me with both. I started small by doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the larger organizations, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months later, a watershed moment occurred. A dealer I had dealt with at the auction house inquired about a collection of Victorian-era brooches. The owner requested confirmation before selling. It turned out to be a massive collection, with pieces from 3 generations of families. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, rarely sleeping and documenting everything. I discovered 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misinterpreted as later replicas. The owner was so delighted with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee, but also offered me a 10% commission when the piece sold. Was that a commission? $86,000. More money than I had earned in the preceding 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone rang. A lot. Private collectors have heard about my knack for finding missed pieces. Estate lawyers seeking advice on inherited jewelry. Even my previous auction house began sending me authentication work. I'm quite sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the news. Thanks, boss. Scaling up. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a fresh gemology graduate who reminded me much too much of myself at that age. She was extremely intelligent, yet she was neglected since she was quiet. She is now my head of authentication and is well worth her weight in gold. The firm expanded quicker than I could have predicted. Moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, Kung Pao chicken odor. Created a team of specialists. I've earned a reputation for finding misplaced items. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry items get misinterpreted as costume jewelry in people's attics. Keeping it secret from my family. However, success came with its own set of obstacles. The bigger we became, the harder it became to keep it a secret from my family. They still thought I worked in an antique shop. Rachel would make these sarcastic remarks during family dinners. Rachel asks, "Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it?" Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Fabergé item that morning. "Sure, I'll look into it." Mom continues to introduce me to everyone as my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I was quoted in Forbes, luckily under my company name, and we had recently built our 3rd office. What's strange about it? Keeping the secret became almost enjoyable. Like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target discount outfit, really Chanel, listening to Rachel speak about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal for more than her annual income. I even started playing tiny games with myself, such as wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings and seeing whether anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her automobile. Managing growth. However, the real challenge was managing growth. By year 5, we'd established offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out that many wealthy people want their jewels verified without the rest of the world knowing. The money was enormous. For example, we needed to hire a large team of financial advisors. Nonetheless, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I purchased a nice, but not flashy house in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not obvious car. The only place I truly splurged? My home office. Advanced authentication equipment. The most effective security system money can buy. A custom-built vault to make Fort Knox envy. What's with the irony? They believed I was being frugal by aiding them. Mom would remark things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection, which earned me a commission greater than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the more difficult it is to explain to others who have always perceived you as inferior. It's like explaining color to someone who has only seen black and white. They lack the necessary context. By this stage, my company was doing really well. We had the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry cornered, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd travel to my parents' house for dinner, playing Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ludicrous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Rachel dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like bringing her boss's coffee without spilling it. A defining moment. One Sunday is very memorable in my mind. I had just completed a huge transaction, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been resting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. Was it just the commission? 7 figures. I drove directly from the meeting to my parents' place, still euphoric from the successful authentication. She said, "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "Oh, trying to save money," I said, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposefully chosen for its subtle appearance. Rachel responded, "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." "Your dad." "Rachel, be nice, not everyone can be as successful as you." I almost choked on my pot roast, trying not to laugh. The anonymous transfers monthly payments to my parents began about this time. Aunt Kelly informed me that they were struggling to pay Rachel's educational loans and medical bills. Mom casually stated that they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I initiated an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was giving $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They imagined the rest came from Aunt Kelly or another family. Rachel, of course, claimed responsibility for inspiring family members to help. Watching Rachel spend my money. The money was helpful, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents began treating me with a strange combination of sorrow and patronizing pride. As if I were some kind of noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending became more extravagant. She'd arrive for dinner with new expensive bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can recognize a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She began taking extravagant vacations and bragging on Instagram about her fortunate life. I'm very convinced she used my support money for shopping sprees. However, I remained silent. The irony was simply wonderful. The MBA drama. Then came the college fund drama. Rachel revealed that she wants to return to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom contacted me in tears, explaining how they couldn't afford it. I say, maybe Rachel could look at state schools? They have good programs too. My mother. Oh honey, you don't understand? Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But, speaking of assisting, may I increase my monthly contribution for a few years? I increased it to $7,000 per month. My accounts were unaffected. But witnessing them compliment Rachel for taking initiative with her education, while presuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The actual kicker? I was giving a guest seminar at the same business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to give a lecture on luxury goods authenticity and business growth. I had to come up with an excuse as to why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own achievement started to feel like a distinct life. As if I were some kind of corporate superhero with a hidden identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was just Sarah, the disappointed daughter who worked at an antique shop. The breaking point, Thanksgiving. The weight of the untruth was becoming heavier. Rachel made rude remarks about my career on multiple occasions. Each time Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Every time Dad suggested I get a real job. I believe I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It began 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, weeping about her back discomfort. She had been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the notion of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd like to tell you that I offered to help purely out of goodwill. But really? I became tired of pretending her dried turkey was appetizing. My response, why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. She replied, oh honey, we can't afford a caterer. My response, don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. Mom, concerned. You're not taking out a loan, are you? I coordinated everything with a high-end catering firm that I use for business gatherings. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered to prepare yourself. It cost more than my folks thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning dawned, and I was feeling quite good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. This magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was for sale, and I had a customer who was interested in authentication if they won the bid. The lunch arrived on schedule, and everything was properly prepared. Rachel, of course, had to respond. Rachel inquired. Store-bought stuffing? Really, Sarah, Mom's is so much better. This is from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm while making toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Rachel shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away from supper and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting intriguing, and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept the same since high school. In the meantime, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my authentication program running, with many tabs open that displayed various accounts and current agreements. Rachel came in without knocking, some things never change, to borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen and realized this was her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, smirking. Let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to. Before I could stop her, she took my laptop and walked into the dining room. The big reveal, picture this: 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, filled with gourmet turkey and half drunk on pricey wine, which they mistook for Trader Joe's. Rachel's reaction. Time to see what kind of important work Sarah's doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to disgrace me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. Like, you could hear the fancy clock I got Mom for Christmas ticking silently. She believed it was a reproduction. My screen displayed, current account balance, $12.4 million. Pending authentication contract, $485,000. Recent transaction, $1.2 million. Hong Kong auction, company's quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face shifted through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between astonishment and nausea. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. Rachel whispers, "This cannot be right," she said. Rachel, honey, what is it? Rachel, voice cracking. She's rich. Sarah's rich. Chaos ensues. If it was possible, the hush deepened even farther. Then Mom began giggling, like, really laughing. She said, "Don't be silly. Sarah works at that little antique shop." I rose up carefully, straightening out my basic cashmere sweater, which cost more than their monthly mortgage. Me? Yes. Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on the liquor. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle Mike began coughing terribly. Then Mom's laughing transformed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so quickly that her chair tumbled over. Mom screams, "You have millions, and you let us struggle?" My response. "Struggle? I send you $7,000 every month." She replied. "While sitting on millions? Your sister has student loans." So there it was. Instead, congratulations. Not, "Wow, we're so proud." Just outraged that I hadn't given them more money. Rachel began to cry. Surprising, I know. Sobbing about how she deserved to know, and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined in. My dad. "How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you." That was when I lost it. Years of being disregarded. Years of dismissal. Years of being considered as a family disappointment. Everything poured forth. My response. Raised me? You shipped me off to grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone, because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now, you're mad that I built something for myself. The following 5 minutes were chaotic. Mom screamed about family obligations. Dad is yelling about ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know just how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team attempted to serve dessert while seeming exceedingly uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously commended as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom discussing how to spend my money, something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I went home in my sensible automobile, a limited edition BMW, my phone started filling up with texts. The family group chat burst. Rachel began posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The aftermath. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a cyclone hit in slow motion. Except that the hurricane represented my family and the debris symbolized my sanity. Let's start with SMS messaging. Within 1 hour of leaving supper, my phone had 47 missed calls. More than 200 messages. Mom followed this intriguing progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Rachel had become a full-fledged social media fighter. Rachel, on the other hand, had fully embraced social networking. She wrote an enormous rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comments section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly formed strong ideas about my moral character. But this is the bit that really grabbed me. Rachel actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurt so much I nearly threw my phone across the room. What was the only career advice she ever gave me? I suggest I try selling jewelry on Etsy. If you're unfamiliar with the term, flying monkeys occur when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to inform me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still believes I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she acquire my number, felt compelled to express her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they arrived at my workplace. I arrived in on Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They informed Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authenticating services. Rachel clutched her Michael Kors bag as if it was genuinely worth something. The conversation went about as well as one would expect. Your mother. We've discussed it as a family. I said. A family discussion, without the family member you're discussing. Mom, ignoring me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Rachel responds. I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad said. And your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. This is me. Did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Rachel responds. That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. You're thinking, I owe you? For what, exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Mama. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything. My response. No. I gave myself everything, and you know what? I'm done. Right there in my own office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Rachel began her phony crying performance, but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things became ugly. They refused to leave. I had to contact security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out while yelling about ungrateful children was bizarre. Jenny asked whether I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I did have their names placed on the building's do not admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New telephone numbers. Fake email addresses. Even tried to contact me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice, threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Marie, but here's the thing about Grandma Marie, she is wiser than all of them together. How did she respond? Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom did not speak with her for 2 months after that. It has been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I relocated to a new home, with better security. I changed all of my numbers. What about the company? We are doing better than ever. It turns out that my family problems attracted several high-profile clients who respected my caution in the circumstance. Rachel continues to write passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. According to what I've heard, she is beginning her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck on that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer wrote them an official letter outlining how the harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now informing everyone that they never wanted my money anyway, and that they're praying for my salvation. What's the best part? For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. No more Sunday dinners full of sly insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their feelings. No longer financing for the Rachel show. My therapist believes I am finally establishing healthy limits. I say, I am finally living authentically. So, that is my story. Reddit? Thanks for allowing me to share it. Special thanks to the catering firm, who sent me a Christmas letter stating that the Thanksgiving meal was the highlight of their year. Edit. Responses to common questions. Yes, I am still in treatment. No, I do not regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandma Marie is doing well. She's coming to visit next month to help me catalog a new collection. One last thing. To Rachel. I know you're probably reading this. What about the Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your most recent Instagram post? Definitely a fake. Just saying. My wife changed after a work trip, then I discovered her therapist was an old friend who convinced her to cheat and ruined our marriage. I noticed a difference in my wife, Carla, about 6 or 7 months ago. She had just returned from her company's annual trip, which was organized by her manager to assist their team reunite and build their bonds. Usually, she returned from these excursions energized, full of anecdotes about her coworkers and eager to share minor experiences that had amused or inspired her. This time, things were different. Her temperament has changed noticeably since the day she returned home. She didn't discuss much about the vacation, which surprised me. When I questioned whether anything had happened, she simply shook her head and dismissed my fears. At first, I attributed it to the usual post-trip fatigue. Maybe she was just exhausted from all the traveling, socializing, and team-building activities. But even after a few days, her behavior remained the same. In fact, things worsened. Carla became angry with me, starting disputes over little matters that would not have disturbed her in the past. Before, my wife and I rarely fought. Our relationship was always healthy. But suddenly, the accustomed calm gave way to strain. Every day, it was as if she was hunting for reasons to dispute, and these disagreements seemed to arise out of nowhere. A comment that would have made her chuckle suddenly resulted in a sigh, or, worse, a fight. I couldn't understand where this sudden fury and frustration was coming from. It was no longer just the disputes. My wife began to isolate herself in different ways. We had a weekly date ritual, which could be as simple as getting coffee or going for a lengthy walk in the park. These outings were meaningful to us because they provided us with a chance to reconnect, unwind, and focus on one another away from the distractions of work and daily life. But Carla began canceling our dates with increasingly dubious explanations. She would complain about being too tired or having too much work to catch up on, even on weekends. My concern grew as the cancellations increased. I miss spending time with my wife, our connection, and our laughter. Her mood swings become increasingly pronounced. She appeared fine one minute and then became moody and withdrawn, retreating within herself. Of course, my mind wandered. I began to worry that she was losing interest in me, or, worse, that she had fallen in love with someone else. I didn't want to think about it, but her behavior seemed so strange and out of character that I began to contemplate options I hadn't considered before. When I eventually approached Carla with my fears, she was emphatic, insisting that there was no one else but me. She even gaslighted me, claiming that I was overthinking things and that she simply needed time to straighten things out in her life. So I attempted to give Carla some space, believing that whatever she was going through would resolve itself with time. I figured if I didn't press her and just gave her space to breathe, she'd eventually come around and things would return to normal. But, sadly, it did not occur. In fact, the more room I gave her, the farther away she appeared to float. She started working longer hours and came home late, sometimes after I had gone to bed. In general, she would tell me stories about her day, hilarious anecdotes about her coworkers, or complain about the current office drama. Now there was only silence. After she returned home, she became increasingly evasive when I tried to question her, and her acts began to create concerns in my mind. With our relationship on unstable ground, I recommended to my wife that we seek marriage therapy. I hoped that with the help of a counselor, she would be able to open up to me and we could figure out what was causing our disconnect. To my astonishment, Carla declined, stating that she wanted to visit a therapist independently and that she needed to focus on herself before we could work on our relationship together. While it didn't meet my expectations, I agreed. Ultimately, I wanted her to feel supported in any manner she needed. Carla soon found a therapist and began meeting with them 3 times a week for 2-hour sessions. I didn't ask too many questions about it, assuming she'd found someone qualified to help her. All I wanted was for her to achieve the clarity and calm she was looking for, and for us to be able to reconnect. Carla appeared to be in a better mood following each session, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. I hoped that this was a sign that things would get better between us, that this was the start of a new chapter in our relationship. Instead, things became stranger. Carla began spending more time away from home, frequently making plans without me. It began with a few evenings here and there, but it quickly spread to almost every weekend. She'd go without much of an explanation and not return until late at night. I don't mind if she goes out with her buddies. In fact, I've always pushed her to pursue a life outside of our marriage. But I expected her to give me a heads up. Her frequent and sudden absences, along with her failure to keep me informed, made me feel neglected in my own marriage. Meanwhile, Carla appeared unconcerned about the fact that I missed spending time with her, no clue of how much I craved our former intimacy. What troubled me even more was when I realized, almost unintentionally, that my wife wasn't only spending time with friends on her little adventures. Apparently, she was also hanging out with random strangers she met at bars. This was something she had never told me. I only discovered out after several of my friends expressed worry. They had seen her at bars, dancing with strange men, apparently intoxicated and acting in ways that were entirely out of character. They'd recognized her as my wife. It was humiliating to learn of my wife's behavior secondhand, knowing that others were watching her behaviors while I remained in the dark. I was absolutely confused, dealing with the embarrassment and uncertainty that her behavior had caused. When I finally built up the courage to bring it up, hoping for an open discussion about what was going on, she rejected my concerns. She waved them off, explaining that she was just having fun and that dancing and talking to strangers did not imply that she was doing anything inappropriate with them. She said it as if her activities in meeting these strangers were insignificant, as if I shouldn't be touched by this version of herself that I scarcely recognized. Then she stopped assisting around the house. Since we both started working, we've always divided household tasks evenly. I've always cooked and packed our lunches every day. Carla handled the dishes, loading and unloading the dishwasher, and was in charge of the washing, while I did all of the folding and grass mowing. This system of shared responsibility has always been effective for us. But Carla abruptly ceased holding up her half of the bargain. She began to moan about how she felt oppressed by having to perform housekeeping, claiming that none of her friends appeared to have to work both at their jobs and from home. We had always had a mutual understanding, an equal give and take that allowed us both to concentrate on our careers while keeping our home in order. Her sudden irritability seemed utterly out of character. When she voiced these objections, I attempted to comprehend her point of view, but I couldn't ignore the facts. I pointed out that if she was referring to her neighborhood acquaintances, most of them were stay-at-home spouses who spent their entire day running their homes. I said that if she was feeling burdened by both work and housework, we should consider her leaving her job to run the household full-time, and I would gladly take on the position of sole earner. However, if she did not want to leave her job, she needed to understand that we both had to share home responsibilities. After all, I had never complained about the housework I did, so why was she bringing it up? Carla insisted that she no longer wanted to do housekeeping, claiming that her obligations at work were already too taxing, and she didn't want to come home and work on top of that. She told me I needed to step up and take care of things around the house, at least until she felt more prepared. Since then, I've been performing all of the household responsibilities by myself, with no assistance. I take care of the cooking, cleaning, and laundry to ensure that everything works properly. I hoped that she would finally recognize and appreciate my efforts. But, sadly, my work has gone unnoticed. So, after all of my efforts, imagine my surprise when I realized that 2 months ago, my wife was going around the neighborhood spreading false allegations about me. I learned from some of my male neighbors, whose wives are acquainted with Carla. These friends, who have known me for a long time, sounded concerned about what my wife had said. Carla had apparently been characterizing me as a domineering or poisonous husband, stating that I never allowed her to live calmly. When some of these wives inquired as to what I was doing to make her feel this way, Carla claimed that over time, she had realized that I was too closed-minded and had prevented her from having any enjoyment. As a result, she began to feel unfulfilled in our marriage. This, she claimed, was why she began engaging with other men. To help her reconnect with pieces of herself that she felt had become too suppressed since marrying me. She also told her friends that she had begun fantasizing about exploring her femininity with other men. At first, I clearly did not trust them. This did not sound like Carla at all. Carla, I knew, was always discreet about our relationship and avoided discussing personal topics, particularly with our friends. Also, why would she lie about me like this? I'd never stopped her from doing anything. For months, she had been doing anything she wanted as I stood silently by. She suddenly blamed me for being toxic and repressing her. I chose to face her directly, telling her what my friends had revealed to me. I asked her whether it was true that she had been talking about me this way. I wanted to hear her side of the story and understand why she felt compelled to share those details with others. To my surprise, Carla did not dispute any of it. She quietly revealed that she had communicated her sentiments with those people, explaining that she was dissatisfied and unsure about our relationship, so she vented her anger to others. I asked her what she meant exactly. Carla began to open up about her therapy sessions, revealing how her therapist had helped her recognize what she lacked in her life. Enthusiasm. She informed me, in an unnaturally detached tone, that she now found me uninteresting and predictable, and that our marriage lacked passion. These words stung, especially since I had always imagined she was happy with the life we had created together. I reminded her of all the times she had expressed happiness, and how we had worked together to maintain our relationship balanced and fulfilling over the years. Instead of understanding where I was coming from, she accused me of stifling her by clinging to old memories and situations that she believed were obsolete. She argued that, while she had grown and kept up with the changes, I had remained the same, which was why we were so disconnected. My thoughts began to spin, so I asked her bluntly, "What do you want from our marriage?" She hesitated, evidently nervous, before adding that she and her therapist believed that an open marriage could help us restore our marriage. I was taken aback. I told her up front that I did not believe in open weddings. Carla then claimed that even if I didn't believe in them, she did. She stated that talking up about our relationship would restore the excitement she felt was missing, allowing her to rediscover herself while remaining married to me. She also emphasized that, in an open marriage, if I wasn't comfortable sleeping with strangers, that was fine, but she wanted the opportunity to do so without guilt. Her suggestion sent me reeling. I could scarcely understand what she was saying. I never expected that our marriage would reach a stage where she would seek satisfaction elsewhere. How could meeting new people while still married improve our relationship? How could her therapist propose something like this? I assumed my wife was seeing a therapist to improve herself, but in actuality, this so-called therapist was merely encouraging her to explore these crazy beliefs. I informed Carla that if she wanted a divorce, she didn't have to lie about being excited or needing anything new in her life. I argued that if she was so dissatisfied with me, she should just be honest instead of making up excuses to justify an open marriage. I told her that it was better for us to part ways than to stay married while meeting up with strangers. This was not how I imagined a marriage to be, and I couldn't stand by it. But, to my astonishment, Carla fought back, insisting she enjoyed being married to me. She highlighted how much she respected me as a dependable and trustworthy partner, and how I offered a stable basis that she valued. Yet, in the same breath, she said the spark between us had vanished. She insisted that we stay married and simply have fun with other people. She suggested that this new venture could help us and keep our marriage interesting. I informed my wife that I needed time to think about it because this was not a decision I could take lightly. But as I spent the following few days pondering on our relationship, I realized that an open marriage was not for me. And more crucially, neither was the person Carla had become. She had changed so much over time that I could no longer recognize her or feel close to her. She dressed differently. Her outfits had suddenly become more exposing and provocative. She was always hooked to her phone and engaged in chats with others. It was as if she had adopted a whole different lifestyle, one that no longer allowed for the principles we formerly shared. She seldom spoke to me anymore and had completely disregarded her job in maintaining our home. She treated me as a roommate at best, not a partner. I slowly realized that I did not want this version of my wife. I didn't want a companion who needed to see other people to feel satisfied. I had spent months trying to be patient, supportive, and give her the space she required, but the Carla I had fallen in love with had vanished, replaced by someone who appeared to consider our relationship as a convenience rather than a commitment. And it stung. But I understood it might be time to let go of our marriage. I had done everything I could, but it was clearly insufficient. After 2 weeks of careful consideration, I got down with Carla and informed her that I wanted a divorce. I explained all of the reasons I had given above and persuaded her not to challenge my decision. Carla, on the other hand, became enraged almost immediately. She accused me of being overly sensitive and felt that requesting a divorce was an unreasonable response. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't just give in and embrace the new lifestyle she was offering. I remained calm, emphasizing that this was not what I wanted and that she couldn't compel me to accept it. Each point I made seemed to make her angrier. Carla suddenly turned on me, accusing me of refusing to work on our marriage, alleging that I was the root of the problem. I wasn't surprised by her decision. She had always enjoyed gaslighting me and blaming me for everything without taking any responsibility herself. I tried to reason with her, but she refused to give in. Realizing we were going nowhere, I asked her to go. Since this was my house, I felt right in telling her to gather her belongings and go now that we were finished. Carla raged at me, saying I had no right to ask her to leave, and even threatened to ruin my life if I followed through with the divorce. Her wrath simply confirmed my choice, so I held firm, quietly advising her not to escalate the issue any further. In the end, she had no choice but to comply, but only after throwing a tantrum. She threw stuff around the home and even scratched my car in a fit of wrath before departing. Fortunately, I documented everything, photographic evidence of the damage and recordings of her outbursts, knowing that I would probably need it later on. This was simply a sad, terrible end to what had once been a really important relationship. Carla has been texting me insults about my manhood and spreading tales around town, accusing me of unfairly kicking her out and calling me a coward for failing to fight for our marriage. Update 1. Thank you everyone for your warm words. I'm not a fool. I now recognize that my wife may have had an affair, or several affairs, outside of our marriage. This is probably why she had the nerve to propose an open marriage to me. Clearly, she only wanted the benefits of being married to someone as established as me while putting no effort into our relationship. Why did this happen? I have no idea. Perhaps she never truly loved me, or she fell out of love over time. It doesn't really matter anymore. Carla continues to leave voicemails blaming me for everything. I'm tired of her continual allegations. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my last update. Carla had been wanting to meet for the past week, messaging and calling regularly, so I finally agreed to meet with her today. Part of me hoped she'd come around, that she'd be willing to discuss openly and even accept responsibility for everything that had happened between us. But as soon as we sat down, Carla went into a new story. She indicated that her therapist thought I was departing our marriage just because things had become difficult. According to this so-called therapist, I was the one who failed to fulfill my promise by refusing to adhere to Carla's requests. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Carla said she was willing to accept me back if I agreed to certain terms. I was taken aback. Take me back? Remember when I asked her for a divorce? To entertain myself, I inquired about her condition. Carla requested that I commit to an open marriage and allow her to leave her job so she could enjoy a stress-free life without having to worry about work. Hearing this made me laugh out loud. Initially, I assumed she was joking. How could she possibly be doubling down on such ridiculous expectations after everything that had occurred? Did she really expect me to be open to any of this after how she had treated me? Her total lack of self-awareness was astonishing. I told her right away that I would never agree to such foolish demands, because I was done with our marriage. I then stated that I had previously consulted with a lawyer and was in the process of filing for divorce. Her face became white with horror. Her tone changed immediately, from angry to imploring. She inquired whether I was really leaving her. I nodded. There was nothing left for me in our marriage. I was ultimately tired of trying to make things work with someone who seemed removed from reality and unwilling to compromise. Then Carla burst into tears. I was surprised to see her cry. This was the last thing I had expected. I gently urged her to calm down and explain why she was reacting in this way. Was she truly saddened over my decision? She should have anticipated this all along, right? Watching her cry made me question whether there was something more going on. I begged her to be honest with me. Was there something more behind her unusual conduct during the last few months? Carla finally opened up and revealed the truth. She added that approximately a year ago, she reconnected with an old high school acquaintance named Elle during their reunion. Elle was a self-proclaimed relationship expert on social media. Carla stated that she and Elle began spending more and more time together, rekindling their connection through long conversations and regular meetups. She acknowledged that Elle had begun to exert a big effect in her life. Over time, Carla disclosed that it was Elle who first noticed that she was unhappy in our marriage and began probing her about me and our relationship. Carla admitted that as she told Elle more about me and our life together, he frequently criticized our marriage, portraying it as oppressive and limiting. Elle continually reminded Carla of how exciting and adventurous she was in high school, when she had numerous boyfriends, and how she had always expected Carla to be the same way. Elle, on the other hand, thought Carla had gotten uninteresting. This caused Carla to resent me. She essentially blamed me for her change in conduct. She felt as if she had lost herself in the marriage, and rather than accepting responsibility for her own actions, she transferred her dissatisfaction onto me. Over time, her animosity grew, and she began to emotionally remove herself, certain that I was the reason she wasn't living the life she desired for herself. Elle gradually convinced Carla that the only way she could return to her old self was to let go of her inhibitions, be more open around others, and simply have fun. When Carla's business trip came around 7 months ago, Elle encouraged her to take advantage of the opportunity to let loose and flirt with her male coworkers, especially because she would be away from home and me. Carla then admitted to having made out with someone during her work trip but refused to tell me his name. She informed me that after returning from the vacation, she felt terrible shame but was too afraid to admit it. However, Elle was overjoyed for her and encouraged her to branch out beyond our marriage. Carla stated that going out to clubs and getting attention from men made her feel recognized and validated. It excited her, and she began to pursue that high. She knew she was doing something bad all along, but she couldn't stop herself. So, when I finally suggested counseling, she was worried she'd give in and tell me the truth, forcing me to leave her. Instead, she sought therapy as a cover-up. These so-called treatment sessions were not actually therapy at all. They were just meetings with Elle to gossip and vent. Carla said that she trusted Elle fully because they had known each other for years and she believed Elle knew her better than anyone else. Elle's influence grew so strong that Carla began to internalize what her friend told her, that she deserved freedom and excitement, regardless of the consequences. When I approached her and explained my worries, Elle would convince Carla that I was controlling or toxic, that I was preventing her from expressing her true self. In fact, it was because of Elle that Carla had begged for an open marriage, expecting me to give in. But, to her amazement, I hadn't. Rather, I had kicked her out. Inside, Carla informed me that she had wanted to tell me the truth after that, but Elle had persuaded her to keep control of the situation, to keep me on edge and force me to chase her instead. Elle had forcefully persuaded Carla not to apologize at this lunch, suggesting that she should demand what she wanted from me. However, Elle's advice backfired, and instead of breaking, I appeared more determined than ever to pursue a divorce. That's why Carla eventually revealed the truth. Carla urged me to not leave her. She admitted that she had most likely lost her mind temporarily, that Elle's influence had muddled her judgment. She said that because her buddy was a relationship expert, she believed her counsel. However, it was now evident that none of it had helped, it had just exacerbated the situation. Carla stated that now that she had finally come clean, she was ready to pursue legitimate therapy and, if I was willing, attend marriage counseling together. I could tell Carla was eager for one last shot to recreate what we had, promising to do everything it needed to make up. However, I was unwilling to give her another chance. Clearly, Elle had influenced my wife's decision, but she wasn't the only issue here. Carla had also been involved in all of this. She had made her own decisions, deliberately and knowingly. For months, she could have mended our connection by having an honest discussion about her feelings as an adult. Instead, she chose to keep everything bottled up and succumb to Elle's destructive advice. She had gaslighted me, twisted me, and rejected my emotions, all while claiming everything was fine. Also, she had cheated on me. And now, when it was too late, she had only spoken the truth out of desperation.